Hello there, hello there, hello there, fellow Earthlings. How the devil are we all? I am very well. I thank you for asking. Now, hopefully, if I've got my shit together, you can hear me in both the YouTubes and the Twitches. Again, if you want to see my face, I'm on the Twitch. If you want to see whatever this is, I'm on YouTube. You can watch it on either or both. I suppose neither, considering that's the majority of the 7 billion people on the planet that will take that particular option. More's the pity. Anyway, hopefully you can all hear me. Now, we're going to be taking a look at two idiots shouting at each... Well, not shouting, talking, debating in the free marketplace of ideas, obviously. But before that, quick programming note for everybody. As people know, on Christy and Kev's Happy Hour on the YouTubes, we have a regular bit where, or we've started a regular bit where we do a film, we review films and stuff. And we did the first one on White Chicks, and tomorrow night we're going to be doing Zardoz, which is an absolutely horrific film. Genuinely, I can't even express how terrible that is. And for the people on the Twitch that can see the little joke meme I've got of the cultural Marx thing, yeah, that Karl Marx makes an appearance, albeit in large-headed form. We'll get to it. Anyway, that's going to be tomorrow night, 7 PM. Oh, just punched the microphone. First one of the evening. Good stuff. Get it out of the way early. 7 PM tomorrow night on my YouTube channel. I've done all the screenshots for that, and a lot of editing, a lot of tit editing, a tiny bit of minge editing, and a tiny bit of cock editing as well. So that was fun. It was a fun afternoon well spent. Anyway, on to today's proceedings. I've talked in the past about MythCon, or it was myth information, or the hashtag better discourse, which was a basically shitlord con. It was taking place in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin. I believe that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. Over the weekend, and it was basically a get together of right wing twats, circle jerking for the most part. Now this one's not quite that. The one we're going to be taking a look at. In the Destiny's on there, who is, by comparison to almost everyone else at this event, the good guy. Even though Destiny is a bit of a twat. Like, he's not evil or anything. Christy and I had him on the Happy Hour, for instance. He's, he has his moments, though. Let's say he has his gamer moments and things like that. So there's an issue. There's an issue there. But he's not. I think he's generally speaking like an anti-racist dude. Socially progressive, even if he is capitalist filth, who come the revolution will have to be introduced to my favourite Irishman, Mr. Gil O'Teen. Only joking. I'm only joking. That's a Minecraft thing. Anyway, so yes, Destiny, real name Steve Burnell III, of course, white people, and he was debating. And debate is such a wrong phrase for these things, because they're just talking to each other. There's no formal debate taking place. It's a fucking joke. They just talk anyway. They're talking about, like, can words hurt you, and cancel culture and all that sort of stuff, which we'll get onto, against Milo Yiannopoulos, who is a twat. I would genuinely look a neo-Nazi piece of filth, who the aforementioned Minecraft joke will be done in Minecraft. It's a Minecraft joke. Yeah, he's a very unpleasant chap. Defended pedophilia, and is indeed, according to his own words, still actively protecting the identity of a Catholic pedophile priest. The priest who raped him and various other children, and presumably is still doing so to this day. Who knows? Anyway, so there's that. Good quality people they're getting there. When Britain sends Americans, Britain sends America its people, it's not sending its best. It's sending, rapists, pedophile defenders. Some, I assume, are good people, but not many. So we send some there, and they do, you know, genocide against the native folk. That's an ongoing thing. Anyway, so we're going to be taking a look at that. I've got nothing better to do with my time than to look at the nearly 2 hours. Yeah, that's right, motherfuckers. This stream's going to go long. Of Milo Yiannopoulos versus Destiny. This is from Destiny's Twitch channel, so I'll kick it to that if it lets me. There you go. I need to. What was it? Desktop audio needs to go back on. There we go. Boom shakalaka. I need to go into that and boom. There we go. So we should all now be. Oh, that's don't need that just yet. Yes, there we go. It's on both. Okay. Hopefully the audio comes through for everybody as well. Although, frankly, I don't really give that much of a fuck. Destiny versus Milo. Destiny on the right, wearing a mask. Milo on the left, ironically, not wearing a mask. Although wearing fabulous shoes, I have to give him that. I didn't bother with the audio of the fucking people introducing them, but they're being hosted by there's a moderator. Although moderate is not necessarily a word I would use for him, but whatever. So let's take a little butchers at this, shall we?
Okay. All right. Hi. My name is Brandon Strock. The name of our panel this evening is Sticks and Stones May Break My Bones, but Can Words Actually Hurt Me? You know, I was actually known for a brief time in 2018 as the poor man's Milo Yiannopoulos, so it's really a pleasure to be sitting.
No, that was Chadwick Moore. You were the poor man's Milo Yiannopoulos in 2019.
It was still preferable. It was still preferable to the alternative, which was gay Candace Owens. I actually prefer this.
So, nice unbiased moderator. That's always good. As if Destiny could have felt more out.
So guys, I want to start off tonight by kind of just asking you to define for me and for the audience in your own terms, just very simple question. I'm going to start with Milo. Milo, define hate speech. And before you answer, the reason why I'm asking this question, which is very basic, is that you are actually a very interesting character. I feel like I did a little research on you, and it's hard to actually pin down. You're not a typical, do you consider yourself a liberal?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, but you don't have particularly liberal views on speech, free speech, hate speech.
It depends, we'll get into it.
We'll get into it, okay, great. So Milo, can you define hate speech?
No, because nobody can.
Okay, fair enough, love it, Destiny.
Nobody can. Okay, Twitch people, talk to me. I'm echoey. Twitch sound is a bit funny compared to YouTube. It's different. Microphone echoey, a bit iffy. Really? Let me just check that, shall we? I don't want to mute the microphone, you twat. No, it's using this individual audio sources. Oh, I don't want that, do I? Oh, that's why it's fucking using the wrong thing. Hang on. No. No, I don't. Which one do I want? Speakers and headphone. Should we go with that one? Fuck it. Save. Hopefully this works now on Twitch. I don't know.
Same question.
So hate speech, we can look at it at 3 different levels basically, right? We've got legal definitions, we've got corporation definitions, and then we've got kind of our own personal, moral, ethical definitions. It really depends on the type of conversation we want to have. Like on the legal level, well in America, I don't believe there's any definition of hate speech on the legal level. On the corporation level, usually hateful conduct is conduct that discriminates against like age, ethnicity, religion, whatever Twitter's, Facebook's, TOS says. And then on our own personal level, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, I guess.
So for the purpose of tonight's conversation, I think we're going to focus mostly on things like social justice, cancel culture, social media, how hate speech would apply to these kind of things. And so I didn't expect your definitions to be that brief, so we'll get right into the next segment, which is, can we compare emotional pain with physical pain? And so to get this kicked off,
fathomably stupid question. What an absolutely ludicrous question. Of course we can. Yeah, I know. When I switch screens on broadcasting, yeah, that's fine. I don't mind because I mean, what are you seeing that is? I'm watch. You're behind the curtains with me. I don't really care. Yeah, I would have to do an individual fucking thing patch for it. Not patch. Link into the actual OBS. So fuck it. Just do a screen share. It doesn't matter. I'm not. If you're annoyed by that screen, look, is this incredibly shaky camera footage of three dickheads on a stage talking? If that's like, if you desperately need to go and watch that, it's on his channel if you want to go and watch that instead. Whereas I'll bring you the individual experience of a man deeply struggling with technology. the boomer par excellence, if you will. Flicking between stuff to make sure that it hasn't like burnt down. Like I keep thinking like my YouTube channel's just going to crash or something, so I'm flicking between bits. If that annoys you, just listen instead. That's fine. You know, I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying, you know, it's a thing. Anyway, yes. What an unfathomably stupid question. Can you compare emotional pain with physical pain? Obviously, yes. Of course you can. Now, is it the same? Obviously not. Otherwise, why would there be a difference in the need for the language there, or a need for a different word to describe, or a different phrase to describe it. Physical pain is, I think, more measurable, more immediately measurable, I think, or more immediately noticeable. Like if someone's blown their leg off, that's a lot more obvious to see than someone who's suffering from severe depression, perhaps. Although there are outward symptoms of that as well, of course. And that's why the right wing are happy enough to accept the existence of like physical pain, whereas like mental illness and stuff, then less, because it's less obvious to them. You have to actually think about it. You have to have some sort of semblance of compassion for another person, which is not something they deal well with. But yeah, obviously you can compare the two. Of course you can. I mean, if anyone says no to that, they're fucking moronic. So it's not really a question worth asking. Or it's just a poorly worded way of saying, how do we compare?
So if we accept that there are reactions in the brain resulting from harmful words that are very similar to those when people feel physical pain, should we separate the two, Milo? Is emotional pain synonymous or worthy of discussion in regards to physical pain when it comes to being hurt by words?
Quite clearly, there are physical reactions observable from words, and it shouldn't surprise us, that shouldn't surprise anyone to hear me say, obviously words can be dangerous, words can be impactful, words can change the world. After all, they're proxies for ideas, which
yes, destiny is wearing a mask.
The question is can utterances, can something you say out loud affect material reality in a way that turns them into something a bit like magical spells?
What?
Can something that I say have a physical effect on you in a way that seems to reflect, in a sense, I guess, I mean, the closest thing I can think of prior to this debate popping up in the last 10 years is transubstantiation. And indeed, we're having this debate in the way that we're...
You fucking dense prat. Like a magical spell or transubstantiation? No, it's called human beings have emotions, we're not robots. So yes, words that get said to you can have an impact. They don't always, and of course, context matters. Like if Milo Yiannopoulos said to me that he was disgusted by me and he wanted nothing to do with me, I'd be very happy. If my father said that to me, or my mother, or someone like that, someone who I respected and loved, that would be crushing. Of course it would, even though it's the same words being spoken. But it's not a magic spell, it's called human beings being emotional, which you should know, considering when you had your debate with Jangles, you lost your fucking shit and got very emotional. And you know what? That's fine. You do you. I don't give a fuck. But the point is, don't pretend like this is some transubstantiation, some fucking miraculous biblical shit. You fucking idiot.
We're having it because our understanding of words and action is based in the incarnation. This is the linguistic and cultural basis of everything we're talking about.
Almighty, is he starting to be the new Jordan Peterson?
This is.
If he starts talking about fucking dragons, I might actually off myself in
words
Minecraft.
become things? Can words affect things? Well, it seems to me that it's quite obvious that they can. You can produce particular reactions in people's brains, synapses, chemicals and whatnot, with words they hear. The two questions, I suppose, are, if we agree that magical spells exist, one, do they operate...
What are you... No, it's not magical spells. You just said the synapses. You're literally creating changes in chemicals in the person's brain, which makes them have, feelings and reactions to things you say. Which you should know, as a person who whips up crowds and stuff, you should know that the stimulus is not some magical spell. Why does he keep saying fucking magical spell and transubstantiation? It's bollocks, man.
Independent of whether the subject knows what they're hearing. So if I can I avara cadabra you, and even if you don't know that spell, can you still be killed by it? And the second thing is,
what?
if we are going to allow that these magical spells exist,
this is nonsense, man.
where in our model do we allow for the soul? We've got the body, we've got the mind, we have our...
Well, we don't allow for it at all because there's no evidence of its existence. At all. If you can prove even the merest slight possibility that there could be a soul, if you can prove that, Milo, not just, oh, well, I feel like I have a soul. If you prove it, then we can build it into the model. Otherwise, take your mumbo-jumbo elsewhere. Fuck's sake.
Our studies, and he knows lots of these, and has talked about them online a lot, and he's right about most of what he says. It can have a direct effect. But Descartes, I think, has misled us a little bit, and we're missing...
He really is. He's starting to become JBP.
It's the soul that mediates the two. It is the soul
if you quote
that
Nietzsche,
has the power to say,
I think
that
I
hurt
might
me, but I'm not going to let it ruin my life.
Drown in my own piss.
And it seems from the studies that I can tell,
Nietzsche,
it seems as far as I can tell from the studies rather, that although children's brain chemistry, the white matter, can be changed by really heavily, properly abusive language in the early years, it seems to be that people develop a kind of resilience. And unfortunately, what a lot of these studies seem to be doing is presenting the case for bullying, which I support. Because the purpose of the soul
That's
in
hilarious.
In this tripartite dynamic.
No, well, it's not a tripartite dynamic. You're just adding Catholic nonsense to the discussion, which is nothing. It's completely out of place. You're an idiot. Secondly, you're for bullying. If God exists, why would he be okay with you bullying people, you utter cunt? Well, I mean, bullying people of the same religion. Obviously, if they're like Muslims or Jews or something, that's open to interpretation, I dare say. Although apparently we're all God's children. Makes you think he must have been putting it around quite a lot, but there we go. Yeah, so, I mean, your cruelty and nastiness will see you burning in the pits with me, so, yeah. I'll see you there, I guess.
Is the mediating layer between the two. There's words create a direct, chemical reaction, and then we have a moment where we can decide. Then we have agency. Then we have individual responsibility. It's at that point we can decide, is this going to be what and who I am from now on? Is this going to destroy my life? Am I going to get offended? And
no, it isn't. Milo, again, when you got offended by Jangles, did you decide to get offended, or was it just an emotional reaction? Now, dealing with your emotions is a part of individual responsibility and stuff, outside of people with extreme mental illness problems, which, or developmental problems, for whom it's not really in their power to do that. But the majority of people who don't fall into those categories, some semblance of individual agency is involved in that. But clearly, having emotional reactions is not something one can just control completely. I mean, you can decide to not let it destroy your life, but if someone says something and it's hurtful, you don't choose to be hurt by that. No one wants to feel bad. Well, again, outside of certain mental health things, which can be screwy, by and large, people don't enjoy feeling bad. So it's not a matter of choosing to be offended. Milo, you fucking idiot. This is rubbish. And he's just being allowed to go with this fucking Petersonian drivel.
So, on the understanding of all that, can words create physical reactions? Absolutely. But are words violence in the way that a physical act is? I don't think so. Because if I punch you, it hurts whether you see it happen, whether you're even aware of it happening or not. But verbal abuse, if you like, doesn't function like that. There's something a bit more complicated going on, and it requires...
Well, of course there is, because you do have to understand it. So yeah, but that's not what's being discussed. We're not saying is emotional pain the same as physical pain, because obviously it's not. It's saying is it comparable. So yes, you have to understand what's being said in order for you to get the meaning of it and to be hurt by it or whatever, or to be elated by it or whatever, to have a physical reaction to it. Whereas, of course, like you say, if you punch someone, and even if it's like you punch them in the back of the head, they don't know it's coming, they still feel the physical pain. Their input to the situation is not required, right? But it's not the same thing because they're described differently. One is a change in your fucking mind, okay? A chemical change in your head, so you have to actually take that information in and process it to get the reaction. Whereas physical pain is entirely an external, in terms of like being punched or whatever. Obviously, you can have an internal disease or whatever that causes you physical pain, but your sort of psychological input to it is not relevant. But they're not the same. The question wasn't are they the same thing? It's saying are they comparable? Well, yes. So your entire thing could have been moving on. Fucking hell, this is dreadful, man.
There's our participation. And our participation determines almost entirely what happens at the end of it.
No, I need to turn to Destiny with the same question, but one could certainly argue that although the effects are different, the results of emotional pain can be much longer lasting and much more scarring than the temporary physical pain that somebody experiences from being punched. But I want to ask you, sir, the very same question.
You, sir.
If we know, or if science is suggesting that the brain can react in a way to emotional pain or the feelings from words in a way that is similar to experiencing physical pain, is this something that we should be looking at and saying that we should be treating the two as equal?
I mean, we have different words for them for different reasons. They're both clearly very different things. I would agree with most of what Milo said. Obviously, verbal words can lead to some impact. And I would actually disagree with the idea that we have to recognize or that we have to participate in understanding those words. For instance, we just listened to a panel for an hour and a half where somebody me-tooing you or calling you racist or sexist or homophobic might have a big impact on your job, much the same way that breaking somebody's leg or slashing somebody's tire or something like that could. In terms of, should they be seen as the same? Obviously, they're quite different, but they could have different impacts. So I think it's important when we have a discussion on, can words hurt you? What level?
Actually, that's true. I hadn't factored that in. Yeah, if someone lies about you and you lose your job, you didn't hear the words, you didn't process that, but it's had an impact on your life. Yeah. Okay. I think it's a fair example.
Discussion in a very obvious way. Somebody can't say something to me that's going to break my arm, but somebody could say something to the people around me that would inhibit my ability to work.
Do I call you Stephen or Destiny?
Stephen, please.
Okay, sorry.
You all have such funny names. So I had a conversation online with a Mr. Jingles.
Sorry about that.
Like a week ago. Remember his name is Jingles, and now Destiny. It's all very. Thank you, Stephen.
To be fair, my video game name is Destiny. Your real life last name is Yiannopoulos, which is pretty funny, right?
It's worse than you think because I grew up with my mum's surname. I actually changed it to my dad's surname. I chose to be Yiannopoulos. It's even worse than you imagine.
So Milo, you began to transition to the next topic, which is.
Oh wow! So Destiny spoke for like a tenth of the time, and they're just going to move on. This is going to be a right-wing circle jerk with tiny man Destiny occasionally piping up to say something vaguely sensible. This hour and a half is going to fly by.
Do words lead to violence? And not so long ago, decriers of hate speech would often point to the connection between hateful speech leading to physical harm, citing that hate speech incites violence. Now, the more recent narrative seems to be that words are violence. So when words are violence, what should qualify as an incitement to violence? Stephen.
Well, no, it's not that words are violence, right? Because that insinuates that all words are violent. Of course not. The words I'm saying now aren't violence, clearly. It's saying words can be violent. You can use words in a violent, attacking way. Which I do on some occasions do on my channel, I suppose. You could say that. In tackling Nazis and shit, I don't always use particularly polite or gentlemanly vernacular. But I think it's necessary. And again, as with all violence in Minecraft, sometimes it's necessary in Minecraft. sometimes it's entirely unnecessary, either in Minecraft or otherwise.
It's such a, I hate this because I'm going to say this at the start of a lot of answers. It's a very complicated question. You know, like when we say our words violence, the first question is, well, what kind of violence are we talking about? Are we talking about somebody getting fired from their job because somebody tweets that they are either an abuser or somebody that's racist? Some people would argue that's a type of violence. Are we talking about the type of violence where if you tweet something at somebody, they're driven to commit suicide? That's a type of violence. Are we talking about just saying mean things to people on the internet without even really knowing who they are? Some people argue, well, that might be a type of violence. So I think the question.
Can I stop you for a second? Because I really want to examine the second one that you just said. If somebody said something.
So again, old Pricky McPrickface in the middle here. Let Milo go on a fucking 5-minute ramble down fucking psychobabble lane about fucking transubstantiation and magical spells when he's just talking about human beings' emotions, without interruption, without him going, "Excuse Milo, the thing you just said there, that's bollocks." Right? At no point did he interject there, even though there was plenty he could have interjected on. He's allowed Destiny to speak for, 20 seconds? And gone, I'm just going to stop you there, and I'm going to ask you, I'm going to probe you further on this issue. I do love a good moderator who's definitely fair and balanced. That's good
to
stuff.
Someone on social media that drove them to commit suicide. Would you consider that an act of violence on behalf of the person who made the comment?
So, in a way, yes. I think what's important to understand when we talk about our words violence, just because I acknowledge that something could be violent or offensive,
look, it's not necessarily, it's not entirely your fault if the person goes and commits suicide, unless that was literally your intention, in which case, yeah, fuck you. But yeah, I mean, if you do something that directly leads to that, that's a violent act. Yeah, you're not guilty of like murder or even necessarily manslaughter or anything, but it's pretty violent activity. Yeah. I didn't even know that was a particularly controversial viewpoint.
I really think that thing shouldn't exist. There's a lot of things we can say that can be taken in an incredibly offensive manner. There are lots of things that we could say that down the road could lead to some sort of violent action. I think it's important that if we acknowledge that free speech is important, which I think it is, unlike the lawyer that was up here earlier, I like the US free speech laws way more than the UK ones. I don't think you should be thrown in jail for teaching your dog how to do a Nazi salute. But if we are going to acknowledge that freedom of speech is really important, which I think it is, we need to understand the downsides to that as well, so that we can address them and deal with them properly in society when they come up.
Well, when we hear, I think nowadays when we hear things like words or violence, I feel like it's most commonly used in the context of pronouns, discussions on race. I have some of these questions coming up later, but I mean, while we're here right now,
angry about pronouns.
Is misgendering somebody violence?
Molding about the fucking
These
pronouns.
words are usually a proxy for other activities, and that's what nobody realizes, like, I don't think anybody actually cares if you misgender them one time accidentally. People walk around acting like if you accidentally misgender someone on the street, they're going to call the SJW police from Canada over, the C-16 division is going to throw you in, some Canadian moose jail or something. I think the problem is that usually that type of aggressive behavior goes along with other things too, like, hey, I don't like you because of who you are, I'm not going to give you any good jobs, I'm not going to give you any good promotions, I'm going to pay you less, I'm going to treat you like shit. I think that these things tend to go hand in hand with each other. I think that saying words are violence is a little bit simplistic, but I also think it's a little bit silly to say, oh, well, they're only words. Well, usually these words are paired along with other types of actions. Everybody on this stage knows it, that people that say certain things act in certain ways as well. And I think it's important to recognize that.
Milo, is misgendering somebody violence?
No, of course not.
Of course not, it's absurd. It's absurd. Because this is Milo's whole shtick, right? Clearly, as Stephen, Mr. Destiny, said, if you misgender someone on accident, I mean, it might not be a nice experience. What the fuck noise was that? Is that a Twitch thing? Did something happen on Twitch? You got an emote, thank you, from Gaming Archaeologist. Thank you. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. Hyper parkour. I don't know what any of that means. But thank you. Whatever that was. I made a noise go off in my fucking ear, which nearly gave me a heart attack. So, thank you. I mean, thankfully I don't live in a place where I have to pay for healthcare, so if I have to go to the hospital after this, I'm fine, but there we go. Anyway, what was I saying? Yes, so, if you accidentally misgender someone or again, another fucking noise, that's gonna have to turn that off, whatever the fuck that is. Misgendering someone or dead naming them or whatever by accident, which I've done on occasion, like with people like ContraPoints, another noise, definitely going to turn that off for the next stream, because that's very distracting. I don't know what it is. It's a thing. I don't even know if you can hear the noise. It goes bling, like in my fucking head. Anyway, maybe I've just got some sort of weird electronic tinnitus. Who knows? Yes, fuck's sake, right. So with like ContraPoints, who was a person I've known or knew, I don't really know them anymore. Back in the day, back when they were like relatively small, I actually had them on my YouTube channel. They were very nice. And I knew them before they were outwardly trans, before they like openly represented as that. And they went by a different name and a different gender. So like in the Blair White Descent of Manosphere episode, I do a bit where I cover the debate she had with ContraPoints, and I say, "Look at him, isn't he gorgeous?" or something like that, referring to ContraPoints, because ContraPoints was still outwardly presenting as male at that point. They weren't openly trans. I don't know if they'd realised themselves that they were trans at that point, but they, you know. Anyway, so this, yeah, I've known them for a long time. So occasionally when I'm talking about that person, I will occasionally slip into the wrong pronoun or something. And I don't, well, ContraPoints doesn't watch my shit, obviously, but if they did, I think they'd understand that. I think they'd be fine with that, because it's, you know, I'm not doing it on purpose, right? So that's not violent. Whereas if you actively go to ContraPoints and say he, and then use their dead name or whatever, that is violence, because you're actively trying to hurt the other person. So again, the context of the words really fucking matters here, and this is the point that Milo tries to get around, and it's the same Weasley fucking logic, quote unquote, that the "it's just a joke, bro" is built on, where they try and obfuscate what they're actually doing, the really sinister shit, behind this facade of normality. Like, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm just calling them a he or a she or whatever. That's not violence. No, what you're doing is you're actively trying to undermine their existence. You're actively saying you're not the fucking gender you are. Fuck you. You're a piece of shit. You're subhuman to me. I care not for you. In the same way that when you do jokes about gassing Jews or whatever, again, the underlying threat behind that is that Nazis are laughing at that and getting succor from that. Okay, so it's not just a joke, and it's not just misgendering. Okay, so the context of it really matters, is the point I'm trying to make. Anyway, we need to get through this quickly, Kev. Come on.
And I think we have to dilute the definition of violence down to the point where it means the same thing as hate speech now means, which is, you know, there
Another noise. Is that noise coming from his chat or my chat? A thank you emote. Didn't you already do this? I don't know what I'm doing now. I don't know what any of this stuff happening and things. Subscribe. Oh, thank you for subscribing. Is that what that is? Community sub. Yeah, if you subscribe on the thing, you can. There's a Rory Cat's emote. There you go. If you can see that on the screen there, it's very small. But anyway. Yeah, which you can use if you subscribe to me on Twitch. Anyway, video is buffering. Are you a lower tendency? Quality. Let's go 480p. I don't know if that's going to make any difference. The bitrate's fine. Anyway. What was I saying? I've totally lost the plot. Yeah, we need to get through this quicker. Come on, Kev.
many different definitions of it as there are, you know, citizens of the United States. It's just.
Oh no, yeah, that was it.
It becomes
it's violence.
It gets to the point where it doesn't mean anything.
Going about watering down violence, motherfucker. You were acting as if you and your ilk were calling people throwing milkshakes at folks terrorism. So, like, you want to talk about watering shit down? Behave yourself.
Anymore, and quite clearly, these videos of people losing their mind, you know, it's man, are very much the, on the whole, they're the exception and not the rule. There does seem to be a particular problem with transgender people being a little quick to temper, let's say.
Again, it's very few. It's very few, my man. I don't know why he feels the need to lie about it. Wow, Kev, you're so old. It says I'm 49 years old. Does it? Where does it say that? What? Stop confusing me with your confusiness.
Maybe it's part and parcel of a package of various dysfunctions that they have. But on the whole, people getting very, very upset about
you
these
don't
things
have
are not
any
actually getting
dysfunctions,
upset.
Milo,
They're making a
yes.
conscious decision to be offended. And that's...
No, they're
clearly
not. No, you're a fucking liar. They're not actively choosing to be offended. They're offended. Okay?
In response to a violent action, that is taking a political position. And very often a lot of this stuff, it's important to bear in mind, is not really about whether or not you hurt me or not. A lot of the stuff that's going on in America at the moment, particularly with race, but also with a lot of these other categories of people and the various linguistic demands they're making on you, is jockeying for status. Now, where I come from in Britain, you listen to someone talk who sounds like me, and you would make very quick and very obvious and mostly correct assessments of where I come from in society. You'd be able to figure out what kind of house I grew up in. You'd be able to tell what sort of school I went to. You'd know the kinds of books I read, and you'd know what my friends look like. But in America, things are very different.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're more stratified along class, so that's generally speaking basically true, I suppose. I mean, he's simplifying it, but if we're doing a Crib Notes version of British society, yeah, that's sort of true, I guess. I don't know what he's going with it.
Those categories are much...
Is he going to say, well, you can't always tell if a blacks are poor, so... Like, is that where he's going?
And that's because largely the class system's been replaced with mercantilism and money. Capitalism is the only class system in this country, really, and the only...
Mercantilism. He doesn't know what that word means, does he?
The dynasties you have here are financial dynasties, not really, when it comes down to it, ethnic or even educational ones. So what we're really seeing, it seems to me, with race and with with women, with a lot of different racial groups, and even now with transgender people, is jockeying for social status. Because even though America doesn't have clearly delineated class categories, everyone is very acutely aware of where they sit in the hierarchy and very sensitive to slights. And there's a lot of what goes on in American public life is dishonest and is conversation at one level removed from what's really happening. What's really...
Well, that's true the world over, really. I mean, the economic populism of these right-wing twats is exactly that. They'll preach about, oh, the big banks and this and that and the other, and when they're basically talking about Jews, but what they're actually doing is like cutting regulations which help workers stay alive and giving massive tax cuts to the rich and things. Or like the fucking Milo's retweet, or not retweeted because he's not on Twitter, but whatever the parlor equivalent of retweeted is, he's reparlored QAnon stuff, which isn't even 1 degree removed from reality. It's politically schizophrenic. It's totally off there, you know.
Happening is people are working out what the pecking order is. And in American society, we are currently in a situation where nobody actually really knows. We've got this very febrile environment in which black people are still trying to achieve socioeconomic equality with whites, although they have largely achieved cultural equality.
What are you talking about? They've largely achieved cultural equality. You fucking idiot. And by the way, they're not just asking for the advancement in the pecking order. It's equality, motherfucker. Like, how can you see protests sparked by the blatant murder, the 9-minute strangulation via neon neck of a human being, that sparks a huge worldwide movement, and go, tell you what, they're just looking for to up themselves in the pecking order, in the fucking hierarchy. Ugh, you cunt. You fucking irredeemable cunt.
Where women don't know where the hell they are because they're told completely different things by everybody. So nobody really knows where they are in the hierarchy. Most of what we're talking about, I see sociologically as jockeying for status. And
yeah, because you're wrong. And not just that, but at no point is he gone, the hierarchy's bad, maybe we should change things so it's not so hierarchical. Or ideally get rid of hierarchy completely. No, he likes the hierarchy because he's a white dude, so that's fine. And he's from like a rich family, so again, fine. The hierarchy's fine, everyone just needs to show up and stay below me on the pecking order. Like, I thought this was got the dissident right, the rebellious right, literally propping up the social order. Brilliant.
I think that this idea that getting down this rabbit hole of language being violent and people inflicting damage on one another with misgendering. This is a very secondary issue to what's actually going on, which is really much more to do with class.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I feel like in some ways I agree, but I guess it depends on what you mean. When you say jockeying for status, does that include like gay people that want to get married? Does that include women that want the right to have medical procedures on their body without the government intervening? Does that include trans people that might want to serve in the military? Does that include black people that take issue with being arrested for doing right? Like we call these just social things.
But they're all status questions. They're all questions about which groups have access to which kinds of civil rights.
Sure.
Yeah, but that's just politics, Milo. What you're describing there is politics. People want, rights and freedoms and shit being denied to them by largely white dudes like yourself, Milo. He literally is just saying, look, proles, the dirty paws, whether you're black or white or whatever, just shut up. I'm in control, so the system's good. Let's just leave it there. No need to change anything. It's fucking transparent.
Those
Well,
are status questions.
That's a far different connotation, because when you say status, it sounds like you're saying like who's going to show up first in my Twitter feed, not who's going to be arrested for which crime, or who's going to have which civil liberties available to them in society.
Well, they're all very closely linked, and we can see weird, dysfunctional hierarchies of these different groups on
Please say
particular
love
social
the
networks
hierarchy.
that don't look like the real world at all. The social hierarchy, for instance, the status hierarchy on Twitter, is almost a direct inversion of many status hierarchies in the real world. So I think they're all very closely related. And I think
fuck is he talking about?
I would completely disagree. I think that the reality of online social media is entirely unlinked from the realities, the political realities that we face. You can read study after study of how online Twitter is way whiter, more college educated, more likely to be male. Different online environments are more likely to be overrepresented by different people. For instance, the people that use Tumblr are far different than the people that use Facebook, are far different than the people that use Twitter. The idea that the rights that people fight for on Twitter, which is usually, my favorite pundit got banned for 7 days for tweeting something stupid, I think that those conversations are a lot different, and I would even say a lot less serious than, as a woman, do I have a right to get an abortion without being obstructed by some...
Yeah, I mean, politics, the allocation, more specifically, I think it's the using power as the instrument, isn't it? Yeah, and that's basically what that is. Like, if you allow gay people into the military, you allow them into a different status within the power structure or whatever, right? If you allow gay people to get married, they can access certain tax benefits and all of that. That is politics, yeah. That's absolutely what that is. But Milo doesn't want any change to the current allocation of power because he's got quite a lot of it. Or less than he had, I suppose, in terms of social cachet and money. But so white men are at the top of the lobster hierarchy, or should I say the actual hierarchy, because they built it and they killed lots of brown people to get it, and they don't want to give that up. But times they are a-changing. Very hip cultural reference.
Weird state statute that says I have to see a picture of a baby floating in my womb for 6 days first.
I think we can agree that there's a difference in seriousness.
Okay.
I think maybe what I was saying is that I'm analysing all of this stuff through the same lens. And
See,
what
he's so
talking about
dishonest with his
specifically
obfuscations. Yeah, obviously there's a difference in severity. Like, some Twitter prick is obviously not the same as like abortion rights or gay marriage or whatever. No one's saying it isn't, but there are degrees of violence. Slapping someone is different from shooting them. Obviously they're both violence, but there's difference in severity. So he's just muddying water here. It's embarrassing.
conforms to that lens which I see to be the key to unlocking American society. But of course, I obviously agree with you that racial inequalities in the criminal justice system and access to abortion are far more serious and pressing issues than the linguistic games that we seem to be so worried about.
Sure.
But I find something that Milo said to
What
be
does Milo talk about all the
interesting,
time?
and I want to get your reaction to it. When he's talking about the inversion on social media of certain
That's the important
statuses,
fact.
I think.
That's the important
What
bit,
is your
wasn't
opinion
it?
about that? It sounded like you disagreed at first.
No,
I think you agree with me because you went through all these social networks where you said they are all completely different.
But was your point essentially that maybe racial minorities or maybe LGBT people actually have more privilege on social media than perhaps
I
white
don't
people?
think they exercise it because present there, but that doesn't mean that the people who are present there don't create hierarchies that privilege them. So Twitter...
Oh, fucking hell. So they're not represented, but they're privileged. I mean, this is fucking nonsense. This is absolute bollocks, man. I mean, I genuinely, I don't know how else to put it than to just say, the thing they're saying now is categorically false. YouTube have been known to block and shadow ban LGBT content. Okay? Twitter is festooned with Nazi bullshit, and when you have a go back, the Nazis will mass flag you and you get fucking banned. Like, the idea that LGBTQ people or other marginalised groups are privileged even though they're not there, by Milo's own fucking phrase. What a load of shit.
is white and college educated, but it is a place of social justice where people of colour, disabled people, trans people, the rest of it, are privileged above others in all kinds of practical, obvious ways. So it just
practical
because,
ways. It's
you know,
fucking
black
Twitter.
people pointed to Twitter on it doesn't mean that the privilege hierarchy there doesn't favour them.
And that's, you know, something you could even go a step farther with that. You know, if I go on Twitter and I say I hate black people, we need to get rid of all black people, I'd obviously get in trouble for it. Not that I can.
You get in more trouble on white Twitter than you would for saying it, you know, in Brixton or in Camden, New Jersey.
Sure, but on the flip side, you can get a ton of people that go on and say we need the Mayo side, you know, kill all white people, hashtag or whatever, and they don't seem to get in trouble for it. So there does seem to be some level of inversion there. But again, I would like to stress the conversations that happen
Mayo side.
on Twitter are so far removed from the political realities that like working class or middle class people live in that I think make it a separate conversation.
We would agree on more of those than you probably imagine.
Probably, yeah. One thing that I do think that Milo said that is incredibly true, and maybe braver than he thinks, that the last panel came so close to understanding, is that a lot of this stuff, when we talk about like SJWism and wokeism, does actually come down to class issues. If you're ever curious why a corporation favors a certain policy, it's not usually because they're trying to maximize their wokeness or they want to be as diverse as possible. It's usually because they're just trying to make as much money as possible. And generally being woke.
So they're both doing a kind of class reductionism. This is fun.
And, you know, being more inclusive to different types of people, it's usually the safest way to make a lot of money.
Right, and the stupid party, the Republican Party, does not seem to understand this about corporate America, which is why it can't fight it. Because it does not realize that the incentives and the imperatives of big business may be completely different from those in the academy, but that does not mean that they won't use the same strategies to achieve them, because those are the prestige mass market cultural values at the present time. And that's what graduates expect who are coming out of these awful universities.
These
So
wonderful universities. The anti-intellectualism of the modern right is going to kill the West, which is ironic because they're the ones who've gone on about other people trying to kill it.
100%, and I agree as well. And that's why Republicans are very free market, open market, no government intervention.
Which is stupid of them.
But as soon as we start talking about social media platforms, well, now we sound like Venezuela trying to nationalize our social media platforms.
No, I'm all for nationalizing Twitter. My problem is, no, look.
You two are becoming best friends.
I'm all for nationalizing Twitter. My problem is with the hands-off, red and tooth and claw, no borders, rampant free marketeers, which clearly doesn't work. I came to America like almost ever.
So Milo wants the government to interfere with social media because that's really important, but no immigrants. Let's stop the brown people. Just the bits that annoy me, the government has to intervene on. Like, fuck you, man. And also the fucking prick Destiny. Oh, we sound like Venezuela. Suck all of my cock.
Almost every other, I suppose I've always been characterized as quote-unquote far-right. I came to America wide-eyed and amazed by this fabulous wonderland where the free market solves everything. It fucking doesn't. It hasn't. And I've been very, very quickly disillusioned by it, by living here. And by living here in this time, in this place especially, in the 80s it probably would have been different. But right now, no, I'm heading in very much the other direction.
100%. The free market does solve for one thing, and that's the maximization of profits. Not freedom of speech, not freedom of expression, just to make money. That's all capitalists want to do.
Maybe we're not as close as I thought.
Sure.
I mean, it is also obviously the greatest engine of prosperity. Has lifted more people out of absolute poverty everywhere in the world.
100%.
Has it? Has it actually done that? Because I thought that was corporatism. Or are you now doing the whole thing where you call it capitalism when it suits you, but then when you want to talk about like sweatshops, oh no, that's corporatism. That's crony capitalism, that's different. These people, these fucking.
100%, I agree. I'm very much a neoliberal.
They're okay. They're okay.
I'm not going to pretend that capitalism is going to give me a marketplace of ideas on Twitter. It's going to give me what the Twitter shareholders want to see. That makes them the most money.
The stupid party wants to see capitalism unfettered, which we know leads to all kinds of absurdities, abuses, and ugliness. I have found myself returning to what is a more Trumpian position, for instance, not only in terms of protectionism and national industries and all the rest of it, but also that big companies need guardrails, and sometimes they need to be broken up. And when a company has a complete total monopoly on a certain type of speech, especially...
What are you talking about? This, I mean, again, talking about the conversation being a step removed from reality, that's completely false. That's not a Trumpian view. Trump hasn't done any of those things. What fucking industries has Trump broken up? What guardrails has he put in place? He's taken away guardrails, in fact, by defunding like the Environmental Protection Agency, so that companies can just dump toxic shit into water. Given them massive tax cuts, so that they accrue even more of the wealth. What are you fucking talking about?
Kind of speech, I'm trying to bring it back for you, a certain type of speech without which people in particular professions, especially very successful popular people in those particular professions, cannot function without those tools. There's a very powerful argument for regulation, which is why Twitter should either be nationalized or broken up or heavily regulated.
Perfect, thank you. So on the topic of social media implications,
thank you.
Stephen, in a live stream debate on freedom of speech in September,
I'm not necessarily against nationalising loads of things. Ideally, I'd like the profit motive to be driven from society. I think it's a cancer. But the point is, in the current system we're in, I've got no problem with necessarily Twitter being nationalised or whatever, but just because it's nationalised doesn't mean there wouldn't be rules. Doesn't mean you'd get to go on there and just spout your Nazi shit, Milo. Because, as with all free speech, it ultimately comes down to what restrictions are you prepared to accept in order for everyone to be able to access it, normally and properly. Because if you just allow Nazis to do Nazi shit, that means that gay people and Jewish people and black people and women and whatever will be driven away from those spaces. Look at Parler. Look at all these other places. When those people are driven from Twitter and whatever, they go to those other places. There's not like a huge ethnic minority presence in those spaces, is there? Because they've actively driven anyone away from that community who might have otherwise engaged. So you do need some restrictions on those things. So I'm not necessarily against that. But the idea, again, the moderator doesn't want to push back on that, because there are arguments against it that you could make. But because he agrees with Milo about everything, and they're just going to circle jerk all the time, he just goes, yep, perfect, never mind. Now I'm just going to ask a question to Steve. Why are you such a cunt? Like, it's the fucking lack of actual moderation here is a little embarrassing.
2018.
And remember, this is supposed to be called better discourse.
Position on free speech that you are in favor of aggressively deplatforming those who engage in speech that is deliberate misinformation or gross misuse of information. Do you still hold those beliefs, and why?
Absolutely. So when we talk about whether or not words are violence or whether or not words can directly translate into violence, I do think that there are forms of speech.
Now, I'm going to get this one in early, because I dare say that old prickface McGee in the middle here is not going to bring up with Milo this little Parler thing he sent out. I just want to put this in there, because what Stephen Bennell said seems pretty reasonable, and he's probably going to explain in relatively reasonable senses the case for a certain type of censorship. Whereas Milo says here, I don't want an end to cancel culture. I want way more of it. I just want conservatives to win more of the battles. Bear that in mind during this entire discussion, because Milo, I dare say, I haven't watched this, but I dare say Milo is going to come out and say cancel culture is bad and we shouldn't do it. But when he's in a little private space here where he thinks the public aren't watching, yeah, that's what he actually thinks.
That can be grossly negligent, where you can draw a straight line from the damaging things that somebody says to the damaging effects that they have. For the right, we complain that liberal college professors do this all the time, that they give a certain type of speech, students walk out of those college classrooms and they're indoctrinated neo-Marxist, postmodern, neoliberal, whatever, neo-progressive, whatever new buzzword the conservatives are using those days. And then on the flip side, you've got people like You know, I can point to Donald Trump. You know, he comes out and he says, hey, you know, there's a medication, hydroxychloroquine. It's great. And all of a sudden, now the people that actually need this medication can't buy it anymore because everybody's buying it. You know, and that's just a piece of misinformation that once uttered causes like demonstrable harm in the real world. And I do think there needs to be some look at like that spread of misinformation, because it's destroying our ability to have conversation online. I don't need to talk to Milo about people having, you know, bad opinions or ideas of you that have absolutely zero foundation in reality, just because people go on and just make up whatever lie, you know, gets the most amount of views, the most amount of hits, and then the most amount of ad revenue.
Right, and I've been obviously on the receiving end of that a lot. I agree with you completely, and actually something people don't often know, they think that the Supreme Court definition of free speech is circumscribed by a couple of limitations, you know, whether the speech is likely to cause imminent, immediate physical violence or is likely to provoke it. But there are other things too that the Supreme Court has said do not fall under, you know, full First Amendment protections. Corporate speech, you know, speech for commercial purposes, but also copyrighted speech that someone else owns. I mean, if we had a system in Europe where, you know, you could more aggressively sue for that, I could put Turning Point USA out of business tomorrow. You know, for everything they do is ripped directly from, you know, my 2015 college speeches. We don't have.
Oh, supreme shade. And they say the fucking left eat their own. Jesus, they're right, and nasty little bitches, man. Anyway, old Charlie Kirk and his tiny face, stealing from Milo Yiannopoulos. How embarrassing.
Have that, but there are also other things, and I think it's more like a sort of European model that you're suggesting, which I kind of agree with, and I think this is actually what Trump wants too. When Trump was saying, you know, that we should punish journalists who print misinformation, my reading of what he said was, perhaps I'm being generous, but my understanding of what he meant was deliberate, malicious untruths. In other words, malicious libel. So
yeah, but Trump thinks that anything that isn't ridiculously fawning, supine bullshit is fake news, hate speech. He's literally calling Fox News fake news now, which is true, but for completely the wrong reason, because he thinks that because they've said things that are mildly critical of him, that's them being evil towards him.
So we have laws for that in Europe. The UK has very tough laws. If you print something about somebody in a newspaper, you have to, if you're responsible, the editor will ask you, can you prove in court this is true? Because otherwise we can't print it. Now, maybe that goes a little bit too far. Maybe the bar is a little bit too high in Britain, and it does seem to be subject to abuse by the rich and powerful, who find little, you know, clauses that aren't even particularly damaging, take people to court, win whatever, and publications end up closing. But
almost
I agree with
there's
you.
a fine line to draw.
It's a terrible night for you all. I'm sorry. What a finale this is. I have to agree with you that the ideal legal position has got to be somewhere between the free-for-all we have in America, where people can cause purposeful commercial harm with malicious, deliberate untruths, which right now.
Would you say that was a violent act towards those entities, Milo?
You can get away with if you're a journalist in America, you can say whatever the hell you want. And the British model, which is a little too draconian, in which you can't publish anything unless you can prove it with documents in front of a judge. Somewhere in between those two is the right answer. UK is wrong, we are
it's
wrong,
a fine
but somewhere
line.
in the middle is the right answer.
But the
which I
question
think
was
is
about
dickhead.
deplatforming. The question was about deplatforming, so I'm surprised to hear you saying that you agree so much. And
well, I went further than deplatforming. I don't just want companies to do it. I want the law to step in. I want the government to step in when somebody, when a journalist publishes something they know is not true, and that's a high bar to clear. You know, if you're if you are the subject of libel, of defamation like that, you have to prove they knew it was untrue, or you have to prove to a judge or a jury's satisfaction that it's highly likely that they knew it was untrue when they published it. Not easy to do.
In the US, almost impossible to do that.
Right,
we not have to wait to get wrong
you cannot
information?
do it here, period. Even in Britain, quite a high bar to clear. But I want to go further. When somebody publishes something materially damaging to your commercial interest, like for instance when the press says Milo Yiannopoulos called Leslie Jones a monkey, called her an ape. Never happened, disgusting, a lie, horrible. I was on CNN Money.
No, you said she looked like an ape, which is different to saying she is an ape. Although, of course, we're all apes. So, I mean, that's just a biological fact. But you were clearly being racially offensive. So I don't know in what world you would get away with libel there.
the next day saying, I didn't do it, other people did it. I'm not responsible for what they say. You could say, maybe I should tell my followers, but I don't consider that to be my responsibility. When that's been on CNN Money, when CNN.com then says the following day, Milo Yiannopoulos called Leslie Jones an ape, and there's no tweets that say it, I've denied it in an interview, they cannot produce the evidence, that deserves a response, and it deserves a legal response.
But this, I feel like, begs the obvious question: who decides what is accurate information? Who decides what is truthful information?
Well, that's what the
Do we not
judiciary is
have
there
the
for.
right?
That's what the judiciary is there for.
Well, so it depends on the
example
platform.
of hydrochloride.
Yeah, it depends on the platform as well. So if we're talking about something posted on, Twitter, well, maybe that would be that platform's job to figure it out. If we're talking about things that rise to the level of legal things, so say defamation or libel, maybe that would be the job of a judge to figure out, or a court to figure out. This idea that people always act like this is like a killer question, like, well, how do we figure that out? Well, I don't know. How do we figure out what's inappropriate or obscene material to show children?
How do you figure out if someone kills someone?
Yeah, like the
It's just-
Supreme
it's all
Court
the
for
same
inappropriate or
question.
obscene material, it's literally like, I'll know it when I see it. That's like a literal Supreme Court saying for how they figure it out.
That's
Is it hard to
exactly
do?
it.
It's absolutely difficult to do. The thing that irritates me about this conversation is that if you want to say that we should be free speech absolutists, if you want to say that we should be able to get on and
Which
say
is a
whatever
really
we want,
dumb
that's fine. I think that's
approach.
even a defensible position. Just don't
It's
sit
not.
here and pretend like it's going to be all perfect and the best ideas are going to rise to the top.
It's going to
and
be
people-
ugly.
Yeah, it's going to be disgusting. of
Just
course.
like capitalism. Just like when we took
100%.
just like when we took the guardrails off American capitalism. Look what happened. Lots of amazing things, and let's be clear, mostly amazing things, but also.
Really, America's gotten better since Reagan? You fucking kidding?
Some absolutely dreadful things. That is going to happen with free speech, absolutely. I do think there is a difference with monopolistic companies that occupy monopolistic positions. So I would, ironically, I would like to see a Twitter that is required to have working, well-known journalists active on their platform and able to express themselves however they want. The consequences for that expression should be in a court of law, depending on what they say about other people.
The right's obsession with Twitter is just remarkable. Laura Loomer, again, just like Milo, journalist, quote unquote, looks like she's going to win her primary so she'll go on to the general election to fight for a congressional seat in Florida or somewhere. And she's literally doing that because she wants to get her Twitter account back. She's been on like a fucking 3-year psychodrama about trying to get her Twitter account back. If you see her meltdown on InfoWars, it's fucking scary, man. Anyway, and Milo's sort of doing a slightly campier version of that, basically.
But when you cannot be a working journalist without Twitter, we got to do something.
you
about
can.
that. When you cannot be a functioning media figure or internet personality without Facebook, and Facebook has called me a dangerous individual, and their definition of dangerous individual.
Well, hang on, I'm not platforming Milo. I'm watching him and Destiny talk and refuting the points as we go.
Includes
That's not really
people
platforming,
traffickers,
is
international terrorists. And when they first dropped this policy, and they had to roll this back within 24 hours, two things were true about dangerous individuals. The first one, you couldn't mention them on Facebook unless you said something bad about them. So you could only mention me on Facebook if it was to ridicule or criticize me. So this is a step beyond, free speech. This is literally delving into your brain and saying this is what you're allowed to think about this person, and this is how you're allowed to express those thoughts.
No,
and
it's nothing to do with what you think. And I don't even accept the idea that that's actually what took place. I dare say Milo Yiannopoulos is lying. It's been known before. But no, it's nothing to do with what you think. It's saying a dangerous is Milo dangerous? Not really. But well, is he? I suppose he is to a degree, but again, there's severity. Whereas if you go on there and are like, I think Al Qaeda are awesome, that's clearly an issue. Whereas if you go on there and say Al Qaeda can suck a dick, that's it's not saying you have to think X, Y, and Z. It's if you publish shit on our site, we can get rid of you. That's very simple, Milo. I don't know why this needs to be explained to you fucking idiots all the time.
Worse than that, and this is directly put into our discussion, as originally written and published, and this was vetted by Facebook's lawyers, this is one of the biggest companies, one of the most powerful, richest companies in the world, multinational, conglomerate, whatever, as originally written until they were forced to back down. This dangerous individuals policy, which has been leveraged almost exclusively against conservative media figures who get too popular and successful.
This is their fucking masturbatory fucking victim mentality thing they've got going on. Whereas, like, say on Facebook, they actively allow conservatives to get away with far, far more than they do, say, leftists. And you have like Tim Pool aiding into getting the news site It's Going Down taken off Patreon and stuff. It's not exclusively a right-wing thing at all. This is nonsense, and he knows it's nonsense. It's been explained to him. I've heard it explained to him in the past. He's choosing to ignore reality because it suits his narrative to play the victim, because that's what keeps the money rolling in. Because there's a war on conservatives on social media. It's nonsense. It's fucking nonsense. So trust me, as a person who's been banned several times by Twitter, it's not just the rightists who cop it.
Facebook's policy said, if you are one of the dangerous individuals, we will permit death threats against you on our platform, even immediate, credible death threats. This is the kind of death threat that the Supreme Court has said does not enjoy any First Amendment protection. And it is also, by the way, it should go without saying, a crime.
Well, no, because I mean, what about if it's not really a credible death threat, like the death threats you downplayed against Brianna Wu and Anita Sarkeesian? Surely we can just pull the same shit on you and say, no, it's not real. No, you're overdoing it. You're a terrible victim-playing idiot.
These are death threats that are against the law. That if you do them, you will probably go to jail, or you will, at a bare minimum, get in a lot of trouble. This, Facebook said, was specifically permitted in the case of these dangerous individuals, of which I am one, Laura Loomer, Gavin McInnes, Roger Stone, Alex Jones. That's insane. And that's a point at which the government should step in.
Well, I'm not entirely sure Facebook allowed that, because I know that I've known a lot of people personally, being on the left, and sometimes more extreme friends that have gotten in trouble for levying death threats across these platforms. Other people.
Well, it was only for 24 hours, and they got bullied into removing that one.
Sure, okay.
So what's on there now is you only allow.
So it was only for 24 hours. Behave yourself.
In a negative context. What they originally published, the day they published it, it said no death threats, no credible death threats, no immediate death threats, no intentions, expressions, or glorifications of violence, except in the case of dangerous individuals. It was an explicit entreaty, dare I say it, invitation to smatter Facebook with death threats about the people that it had.
I don't think this is true. I'd like to see some evidence of this. I'm just going to put a big citation needed on his claim here. I don't think Facebook did this. I think he's lying. If you want to show me evidence to the contrary, I'm more than happy to listen, because that would be quite something. But
designated to be dangerous individuals. So that was rolled back very fast within a couple of days.
For the people that listen to this, and the concept of freedom of speech, it's like, oh my God, this is so wrong. Just as a reminder, this is Facebook exercising their First Amendment right. When you talk about free speech absolutism, part of that is, well, if I'm an entity and I own a platform, I can decide what goes on it. That's my freedom of speech. If you oppose Facebook's ability to limit or curtail what people post on their platform, then you're actually obstructing their freedom of speech as a corporation or legal individual to do so, which is something you have to understand.
This is why being a free speech absolutist, although I may have been one of the best known ones, possibly the best known one, half a decade ago, is an ultimately insupportable position.
Of course.
Because it creates mayhem.
Right,
Stephen, if you support...
He just said, of course. Destiny just said, of course, but earlier he said it was a defensible position. And it's not.
Aggressively deplatforming those who engage in deliberate misinformation, gross misuse of information. Where do you draw the line? What about parody?
Okay, but are you going to ask Milo about this at all? No? Just ask Stephen, because Stephen's the censorious one, clearly. Because he's a commie. He's not.
It would have to be determined by. I guess I don't know if you'd have an independent arbitration thing that does. You could have it on. Yeah, if you're clearly known as like a parody person, right? If Nathan For You does a skit on anti-vaccination, I'm probably going to take that a lot more as a parody than if Alex Jones comes out and says vaccines don't work. I'm not really sure. When it comes to satire or parody, we make those decisions culturally. Is that guy joking? Is that guy not joking? And in a legal sense, we kind of make those distinctions as well, right? Like parody is literally a part of copyright law. Can I take your song and make my own song over it? Well, whether or not you can or can't depends on how transformative that content is.
Making the decisions culturally, to me, or as a society, feels you're kind of making an assumption that we're all on the same page, which we absolutely are not.
We're not, but we make a lot of people. It's funny because you think that our values come from the law. The law is informed by what we believe culturally. The law will follow what culturally we deem to be acceptable. It's happened with gay marriage. It's going to happen with marijuana. The law will.
I mean, that's true to a degree, but say with like gun legislation in America, because the gun lobby own Congress, even though 70% of NRA members support reasonable like background checks and gun legislation, it's not being passed. It's not even being discussed. So that's not quite true in all cases. Generally speaking, it is, but not always.
We cannot legislate away cancel culture, let's be clear, right? You can't pass a law just because it is an ugly and ugly runaway train right now.
Which you want to be worse, but just for conservatives to win, Milo, you lying bastard.
You can't legislate it away. It's wrong and it's destructive and it creates racists and it creates sexists.
Why do you want to create more racists and sexists, Milo?
And the manner in which it operates, the punitive and vicious, indiscriminate and disproportionate manner in which cancel culture operates, creates exactly the evil that it is purporting to defend against. And
I mean, I repeat myself, but why do you want to create more evil? Milo, why do you want to create more evil? You lying bastard. You hack. You charlatan. You fraud.
I suspect that for many people that's part of the point, because I think the left has a bit of a, as Douglas Murray puts it, a supply and demand problem with bigotry. I don't think there are enough racists around. So
to prove that, I'm going to cite Douglas Murray, who's a neo-Nazi prick who, platforms all kinds of bigoted scum, including actual like skull-shaped people and stuff. Grim.
Has to create more of them with this shit, and I think they have. And they do it in a variety of ways. I mean, George Floyd made no sense unless it was clearly your objective to make more white racists. Well, congratulations, you did. America's at least 20% more racist post George Floyd.
Yeah, black people standing up saying "please stop killing us" creates more white racists, but that's the black people's fault somehow. Milo Yiannopoulos is such a racist fucking twat.
I think it was on purpose. It
was on purpose, yeah. The crowds purposefully responded to try and create more white races. What are you talking? He's not going to interrupt him at any point and say, that's got conspiracy bullshit, what are you talking about? No, he's just going to sit there, the fucking moderator, like a twat. And fucking Destiny's just going to sit there as well, and not go, Milo, whoa, what are you talking about, you dopey bastard? That's fucking gibberish. No, he's not going to say that, he's just going to sit there like a fucking dullard.
But cancel culture you can't legislate away. You just have to viciously punish the people who are doing it.
Including you, Milo. Do you want to be punished, Milo, for that?
Unfortunately, when they occupy prestige positions that are protected by monopolies, which are not regulated, and there's no protection in law for vicious, untrue statements made about people, these are the two problems we want to fix. Those are the conditions under which cancel culture emerges.
No, you don't want to fix the problem, you just want it targeted just at leftists. You're a liar and a hypocrite.
If we fix those two things, cancel culture would not flourish like it does. It would be a much lesser problem.
Yeah, and I think real quick, when we talk about cancel culture, I might get some pushback immediately, but I think that all of us are pro-cancel culture. Usually what we argue about is like how wide or narrow should that band of cancellation be, If our employer liked an Alex Jones video, should he be fired as our boss?
Yeah, that's someone mentions in the chat, who was it? Or screw it. Points out Milo literally got famous because of Gamergate, which was itself cancel culture. They wanted to cancel certain journalists because they, maybe rode a few dicks too many for their liking. Not misogynist though, no.
Because he's, compromised? Probably.
You're very mean about Alex. You got a hard on for him.
Sure. Yeah, I'm
you got a stonker for Alex, haven't you? Take a different example, for God's sake.
Okay, how about if they like a
people will say they're in love.
Sure. If they like a Milo.
Yeah, Milo, just because you've taken the Alex Jones dirty dollar to sell his fucking soy pills, his Brain Force Plus, and his super male vitality, because you're a journalist, quote unquote. Yeah, you don't have to defend him all the time. It's pretty pathetic though. You were given every opportunity in life and you fucked it to the point where you're a bit part quote unquote journalist, a presenter, a pill salesman, for Alex Jones, you have failed.
First tweet, for instance, okay? So we know that they're hateful and anti whatever. But like, if we have a boss, for instance, that goes out publicly every single night and they scream from the street corner, I hate black people, if I had the chance, I'd kill them all, blah, 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 blah. Like, we wouldn't want this guy as a boss, right? Like, is it cancel culture to say that not every single person ought to be on every single platform?
No.
You know, the guy goes on a platform and says, I think I should be able to post pictures of underage children.
No.
What? Is that, again, am I making noise, or is someone else making noise? Stop making noise.
Probably, I think most people would be opposed to that. So
We're just saying there
we
should be social consequences for bad behavior.
When we talk about cancel culture.
Yeah, that's precisely it. That's what cancel culture is. It's social repercussions for shitty behaviour. That's precisely what it fucking is. Like, these people, and it's the same with the fucking idiots who signed that Harper's Magazine letter about cancel culture. What they want is consequence-free speech. They don't want the consequences. And that's never existed anywhere, ever. And it never could. Because my right to criticise you is dependent on me having the free speech to be able to do that. So by you saying that I can't do that, or I'm committing cancel culture and I'm a bad person, blah, 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 is you trying to infringe on my fucking free speech. Everyone has the free speech. You can say something shitty, I can tell you to go fuck yourself, you can tell me to go fuck myself. Fine. The free marketplace of ideas. High level ideas in action. But you can't then turn around and be pissy and moany if I tell you to go fuck yourself. That's not really how that's supposed to work. I mean, you can react that way, but to try and force some sort of legislative change on that basis is a bit yikes. It's a bit cringe, my friends. A bit cringe.
My main worry about cancel culture isn't that we cancel people, that sometimes that band becomes very narrow, where it feels like there's a sizable portion of the country that wants every single person that votes Republican out of a job, that's scary to me.
Well,
but I don't think that's the same as saying, like, if you get on, some massive platform and say, well, I don't think vaccines work, don't do it, and now we've got people that are dying of the fucking measles in the United States. Like, holy shit, like, something has to change here. And I don't think it's like an all or nothing, like, we can't cancel anybody, or we have to cancel everybody kind of
Hey
thing.
guys, if I may, we have a whole
Just-
segment about cancel culture.
Who's saying that every Republican should be cancelled or it should be out of a job? Because like everyone in this, let's Republican read conservative here in Britain because it's the same basic dynamic. Everyone's got a Republican relative. They're not necessarily a nice person, but you don't want them out of a job because they're also like relatives and they've got like kids and family and stuff that rely on that money. So why would you want them out of a job? That's just not true. This is not. He's not. Fuck's sake, he's not opposing Milo. This isn't a debate. This is a fucking grievance culture circle jerk. This is fucking embarrassing.
Are coming up.
We'll get to it, but I'm going to help you again.
Well, I don't need you to help me, but I have two more questions for Steven about social media.
Because this is the second time he's asked this now about nationalising industries or the importance of Twitter and stuff. Like, this is the thing that needs to be discussed, really. When there are actual real issues like the black bagging of protesters and shit, that's an actual infringement on their First Amendment rights in America. But no, talk about the nationalisation of Twitter, which isn't going to happen.
So upset about how this evening is going.
Yeah, I know, unfortunately. I actually said it just
This is going to do you just as much damage as it does me.
The problem is that...
No, it's not going to do Milo damage. This is the whole point. The debate bro people have desperately tried to resurrect Milo, it seems. I don't know why, other than, I suppose, clout or something. He still has certain name recognition, maybe. But just leave him. He's dead in a ditch, metaphorically. Leave him there. This isn't going to do him any bad. This can only do him good. He hasn't had a platform in a long time. But now, the debate bros, including the likes of fucking... Peter Cuffin was supposed to be in the Destiny chair there. He was initially announced as like the guy who was going to oppose Milo, and then he pulled out. And so Destiny's doing it. These fucking people, why would you want to fucking platform this garbage bag? Like, just...
I'll be consistent
So
with my arguments.
frustrating.
When I say that, like, perhaps we need to look at, the strength of some of the social media platforms to where if you're banned from Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, I don't know how much of a public voice you actually have anymore. I'm not actually sure how effective you can be as a communicator. But I would extend that to go like, well, maybe we should increase, like the strength of unions. I don't know if you can negotiate against an employer or whatever. Like, I'll carry that to its logical extreme. I won't just stop conveniently at social media because that's the only thing I care about, because that's the only thing I post on. But yeah, I think there can be very good arguments made for the idea that if you get deplatformed across every single large social media, you've essentially lost your public square, like in a way that is the new public square in the United States and in the world.
Right, and as patient zero, like I'm over it. It's fine.
Twitch died? Okay, we back on Twitch. Can I get a hello in Twitch? I don't know. If it died on Twitch, it died on Twitch. What can I do? Hello everyone in the YouTube chat, by the way. We'll give the Twitch arenas a second. Abolish the stream finished? Question mark. Apparently it did. Apparently we're going. It looks like we're going on Twitch. I'm just gonna carry on. If it's not working on Twitch, apologies. Yeah, okay. Whatever. Oh shit. I don't want a new tab. The stream isn't going no more. Isn't it? It says it's going. Hey, look, it's on. 1 minute 17, 18, blah blah blah. Go away, weird Apple in foreign language. The stream isn't going. Twitch is dead. What? That don't make no sense. Look, it says it's broadcasting now. Hang on, let me give me a fucking second. This is outrageous. Why isn't it going? Destiny. Oh, this is fucking infuriating. Apologies, everyone. Fuck off, Milo. End stream. Yes, end stream. Start stream. Go live. Hopefully this works. Is this going to work? Is it going to work? Watch now. Is it going to work? Yeah, there we go. I'm back on Twitch. Fuck's sake. I don't know why it didn't start again last time. Anyway. Yeah, so we're back on Twitch. We're still going on YouTube. Let's continue.
Fine, but this was like I'm happy. I'm semi-retired. I live with a supermodel. I'm good. But I did used to make a hell of a lot more money, and I did used to be a lot better and more effective at my job. But for the kind of people who like me and agree with my points of view, it's not a
You defended pedophilia, Milo. Let's not bury that lead.
good thing now that I can't go out and speak in public. That I have to have some absolutely terrifying guy like shadow me everywhere I go so I don't get killed. These are not good things. And I wouldn't like it to happen to somebody on the left.
Killed. No, that's not true, Milo. You were happy for that to happen to people on the left. It's very obvious. Twitch gang. Gang. Yeah, by the way, if you want to go into the Twitch, it's back. And you can see my beautiful visage. Not really doing a lot. I need to put something in the background there, don't I? But anyway. But yeah, Milo's full of shit.
Either because I think it poisons and poisons is too waffly a word. What I mean specifically is it impoverishes public debate. Why? Because the people in power don't take out extremists on the other side. They take out the most effective people on the other side. So this is why you see Stone, Loomer, Yiannopoulos, McGuinness, and Jones taken out on the right. David Duke still has his Twitter. Richard Spencer still has his Twitter.
Nick Fuentes still has
well, I don't put Nick Fuentes in the same category. This is a conversation for another day.
Yeah, neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes is fine. He's not an extremist. Fucking hell. What a joke. Anyway, yeah, it really impoverishes debate not to have Alex Jones on Twitter. It really impoverishes debate not to have Milo Yiannopoulos' hot takes about. I mean, literally all he does is talk about sucking black dick and talk about how Muslims are evil and Mexicans need to die or something. Like that's. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that's the basic gist of what he is. That's not impoverishing debate at all. There's nothing lost by you not being there anymore. Nothing.
They don't take out the extremists on the other side. They don't take out the people with actually socially unacceptable points of view. They take out the people on the other side who are making their life difficult. And that's you know why you shouldn't rejoice when you see it happen on either side. My big move, my evolution, my growth with this question over the last 5 years is.
Yes, Milo's growth.
It didn't work taking the moral high ground, and these principles are all fine. Maybe we should just lean into these new speech codes. Maybe we should bring blasphemy laws back. I mean, after all, they did work, so I...
God. When Milo said he had a growth, I was hoping he'd be on the side of his testicle. That's a testicular cancer joke. Lol. In Minecraft. Anyway. Yeah, we need to bring back blasphemy laws. And yet he's the pro-free speech guy on the panel, apparently. But we need to bring back blasphemy laws. It's not that he wants to set up a theocracy or anything. No. Of course not. Of course not. That would be crazy. What a fucking idiot.
Perhaps we should just forget all this shit and instead try to pass a law that makes it illegal to speak ill of Jesus Christ. That makes it illegal to deny the incarnation, to deny the Trinity, to speak critically of the orthodoxies and the catechism of the Roman Catholic Church. I quite like that.
Yeah, he's very pro-free speech, Milo. Very. What a joke. What a joke that this motherfucker has been billed as a free speech advocate. He's literally saying if you needs to be illegal to criticise the Catholic Church. Which is interesting considering he's also pro-pedophile, so that makes sense, I suppose. But, you know.
Wave that through. So because I kind of know where the questions are going roughly, I think my big movement on this from 5 years ago is if we've lost the war for high principle and we're going to go in for these speech codes, why don't we let's figure out what they're going to look like and who gets to make them, because so we can agree dismally and miserably for both of us on high-minded matters of principle as educated and attentive observers of what's been going on for the last 5 or 10 years. But quite clearly, reasonable people.
Do you want to huff your own farts anymore, Milo?
Like this are not in charge of what's going on. So maybe we need a revival of the religious right. If the social justice is getting too out of control, if the left is getting too out of control, if they're cancelling people for saying
it's not as if they're literally, still one of the most powerful groups in America who helped get Donald Trump elected, and who Donald Trump literally admitted it was because of evangelicals that he decided to move the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, because it helps fulfill their apocalyptic prophecy from the Bible about Armageddon and stuff. Yeah, if that were true, what Milo's saying would be ridiculous, because the right clearly are still a massively powerful group in the American the American right, religious right are a massively powerful grouping in that country. But there we go. Milo's full of shit, isn't he? Like, everything he says is just wrong, and he's not wearing socks, which is degenerate.
That what did Julie Bindel say? A bedwetter in a bad wig is still a man. If there can't be people for that, maybe we just need our own version, and maybe in fact, the religious right, but with religious right, but better on Twitter is actually what we need now. So that's my great moral quandary at the moment.
I'm going to go ahead and say that we don't need that.
This audience is not yet caught up from 2016. They don't realise it's 2020 yet, and we've moved on.
Final question.
Exactly. They're still in the Kekistan phase. They haven't moved on to full neo-Nazism yet. They'll get there. But there's definitely not a pipeline, honest. No.
For Stephen in the social media. In the same live stream I was describing, you stated...
You were a really big fan of the stream, weren't you?
Yeah. Well, I watched like two.
He's the only one he watched.
Yeah.
In the same...
Like you did a school project, you got 32 quotes from the same source, and then you got like 2 quotes from Wikipedia.
In the same live stream...
All the other links are Wikipedia.
You stated about Milo Yiannopoulos.
Uh-oh.
You stated about
we
Milo.
were getting.
No, this is good. Finally, we can fight on something.
on
Finally, we can fight on something. Tell me,
No,
what did I say?
we were getting on so well.
Well, it's about to change.
All I want to know is if he lied, because if he lied, he's a hypocrite because he's breaking his own fucking rules. So
Well,
go.
let me read the question.
This is from 2018, though. World has changed a
You
lot.
said-
right?
Oh, no, I said 2016.
You guys are very nervous all of a sudden. Listen.
You're on thin ice now. Look at
Also,
you.
look, he's-
Look, I'm a thin.
The moderator's only asking about quotes from Destiny. He's not going to bring up anything from Milo at all, even with his incredibly checkered and contradictory statements in the past. No, that's fine. Better discourse. Yep.
Fidgeter. Everyone thinks I'm on coke. I'm just like.
All right,
Alright, can I call him a white nationalist or a Nazi?
No,
Just get the word out. Let's go.
Look at him
Just bring it
sitting
up.
forward in his chair. It's right
Oh,
now.
Listen, I would
Let's
like.
see. Let's see.
Hey, I want
What
to get
did he
through.
say about me?
I want to get through.
Because
This.
I'm lovely.
I would like to get through this quote.
Apparently we agree on everything. So whatever he says about me must be true of him. What did he call me?
All right. Well, I would like to get through this uninterrupted. Let me say.
I can't promise that, but come on.
You stated about Milo Yiannopoulos. I fucking hate Milo. That little fucking piece of shit.
That's fine.
Dumb fuck, motherfucker,
Fine.
pedophile, homophobic piece of shit.
Oh dear.
That sounds about right.
Oh
Sounds like
dear.
that's easier for me.
Do you stand by those statements today? And why did you call Milo that in the first place?
Well, there's a lot of insults in there. Which one you want?
Well, I can live with dumb fuck. I can live with motherfucker.
So let's go to the two most inflammatory
And
ones.
to be,
Why did you call him a
no,
pedophile?
No, and to be clear, homophobe is true.
Yeah, but why did you call him?
Yeah, it is. Like he says that almost like it's a joke, but that's actually true. He is homophobic. He is also gay, but he is very, very homophobic.
A great issue with a stream that you had where you made it sound like it was a necessary part of the gay experience to have a relationship with an older man. That was something that struck me the wrong way for sure.
Okay, I think what I said was, as a recipient of that relationship, as the younger party in it, and not the older party in it, it can be beneficial for someone.
Hang on, whoa, time out, Milo. Because when you were under a lot of media pressure for that, and you remember you got deplatformed from CPAC, because it was the Conservatives, the right, that actually deplatformed you, Milo. I had a very small hand in it. I'm very proud of that, for anyone who doesn't know. It was one of my videos that was played to him on the Drunken Peasants podcast, the former incarnation of that podcast, that caused some of the furore, his response to it, I should say. But on the Joe Rogan thing specifically, there was another part of the clips that were used by the, I think they're called the Reagan Battalion, put together these clips, including the little bit of mine as well, or his reaction to mine on the stream. Including the bit from Joe Rogan, where he was saying that he was the recipient, but when he got blowback from that and the media cancelled it, or he gave a press conference from the media, he was saying he was a victim of pedophilia, he was raped. Now he's saying he's back to the original story, which is clearly the thing he actually believes, because he is very pro-pedophile, that he was the recipient of a loving relationship when he was between the ages of 11 and 13. He was pretty vague. 11 to 13 years of age, a man in his late 20s, a Catholic priest who he knows the identity of still to this day and won't reveal it and won't go to the police about this, raped him. That's what took place there. Okay, but he's now saying that that was a loving relationship and an important part of his development as a homosexual man. So that's the story he's gone back to now. He's now no longer the victim because he doesn't need the sympathy of the audience at this point. So now he's going to go back to that linking homosexuality to pedophilia, which is the core part of his homophobia, because he's a Catholic extremist as well as being gay. Cognitive dissonance for the win, I suppose.
With those young men, because they, when their families reject them, somebody can kind of inculcate them into life, someone can accept them, various things like that. Sure. This got grotesquely misrepresented by the right, incidentally. And then places like Newsweek, rather than saying, which is, this slippery, disgusting thing, has been accused of covering for pedophiles, which was a lie, total and complete lie, has been accused of being soft on pedophiles. Newsweek eventually contracted this to has been accused of pedophilia. And when I got in touch with them, they changed it very, very fucking fast. But I am going to...
But what I really wanted, look, in that clip, my video to him about his pedophilia defence that was played to him on the Drunken Peasants and spiralled partly into that whole shenanigans, which I'm very proud of. I am still very proud of that. Anyway, they cut it off though just before the really important question, right? Because I laid out the clips of him on the Joe Rogan podcast, and asked him why he was pedophilia and stuff. And they played that bit to him, and he responded, and part of that was the controversy that eventually got him deplatformed and stuff. But they cut it off at the point and moved on to a different topic, a different thing. Just before the question I asked him, which was, if you think it's an important part of homosexuals' development, a young gay man's or gay boy's development to be raped by a grown man, if you think that's an important thing to do, an important thing that happened to you that you thought was a positive thing, would you be prepared now as a full-grown man to engage in sexual intercourse with a minor? And indeed, if you think that's okay, have you done that? I'd love to hear his answer to those questions. But unfortunately they cut the video off just before we got to that bit, which is fair enough. I don't think they were trying to hide that. That's how the nature of how that show worked at that time, where they were quite skittish, and they'd gotten a fair bad reaction from Milo that blew up into social media stuff, so they got what they wanted from that. But I'd love to have heard him respond to that. That would have been a lot of fun. Laseragar is now hosting you. I don't know what that means, but anyway. Am I trying to remove him? Remove who? What? Anyway, let's continue. So yeah, he hasn't technically been accused of pedophilia, so to write that was clearly wrong. But it would not surprise me if something like that came out in the future, given the things he has said. But he certainly defended pedophilia and is doing so now. He's gone from the initial story, which was it's part of a loving relationship between a boy and a grown man, which is rape, to him being the victim. In that press conference, he was the victim, and everyone needed to be super nice to him because he was the victim of pedophilia. To now going back to, oh no, that was fantastic. I'm glad that priest fucked me when I was a child. He's a shameless pedophile defender. He's a sick human being. Fuck him.
Give you the benefit of the doubt and say that you were just reeling off insults, and I won't hold it against you.
Okay,
So
well,
you're not
I appreciate it.
offended? I don't really get offended. I mean, I've said far worse things about myself than anything he can come up with. Are you sorry you just said it?
By the way, you do get offended all the time, Milo. In the thing with Jangles, you got offended and got very emotional. Which again is perfectly fine, but don't pretend that other people, therefore, are abnormal for doing so.
I'm sure we both have. No, come on. What are we
Come
doing
on,
here?
that's bullshit. Don't do that to him.
I want to know.
His fan base will never forgive him. He's going to have to do a Fauci
First of
now.
all,
He's
my
gonna have to do a
fan
Fauci.
base hates me for half the things I say
Is
on any
going to
given
a
day.
protest more likely to get you COVID? Well, any guard, you're going to have to make him do a Fauci. Don't
I know,
make
but
him
if
do
part
that.
of your
Don't put him
argument-
in that position.
No, so I stand by.
No.
I stand by what I said. And I
Brandon,
feel
But
like
that's not perpetrating misinformation?
no, I feel like
Better
if you ask me to defend it,
discourse.
I might have even in that stream. I don't know if that was just a string of insults we were
Better
going for. I feel like the displaying
discourse.
that like these
This
kind of
event
like adult adolescent
is called
sexual
better
relations can be
discourse.
healthy for people, even if in some
Yeah,
reality
that
that might
I
be
know.
true. I feel like it's a really harmful thing to perpetuate. I would never.
Okay, but that doesn't. That's a very different thing to claiming that somebody fucks children.
No,
Which
I
is
would.
what
Yeah,
you're
no,
claiming
sure.
when
That's
you
true.
call someone a pedophile. So by your definition, you're in jail.
Holy shit. Good thing I live in the other country though.
Finally, a little heat.
Well, you wouldn't go to
Lightly.
prison for
Alright,
abusing
listen,
a
I'm fine. I'm
pedophile
over it.
here.
I'm like.
Wrongly. Like, that's, again, the Bill C-16 thing is nonsense. No one was ever going to go to jail for misgendering anybody, because that's literally not what that law was about. Read the Canadian Bar Association's verdict. Anyway, which ultimately smacks down Peterson's lies, although they don't address him directly because they're not petty. Anyway, in Britain, if you call someone a pedophile and they're not, they can sue you. Yeah, that's true, but you're not going to go to jail. Of course you're not. Fuck's sake, they don't put rapists in jail. Not all of them, anyway. Because we don't live in a rape culture, though, apparently. So.
Like I'm good. Like, nobody could do any more damage to me than has been already done, and in some cases I did myself. But
Very
just
welcome,
strictly accurate.
Milo.
When I mean about people, I pick things that are real and true, and it's important to be careful about your insults because something like that, for instance, doesn't hurt. You could see it didn't really. I was like, yeah, okay, I've heard that a million times before. Not particularly cutting. Whereas if you come this evening and said, Jesus Christ, you put on 25 pounds since 2016, that would be both true and hurtful.
Sure, I would qualify what I say then. Instead of calling him a pedophile, maybe I would say pedophilic ideology enabler.
I would disagree with that, but at least it's not going to get you in jail according to your own.
Thank you.
Okay, fine. Let's move on, shall we?
So
Perfect.
he'll disagree with it, but it wouldn't be libel. Let that sink in for a second.
So moving
Oh, from your next live stream, Dustin, you called Milo what's...
back to the topic of cancel culture for a moment. We see a lot of times these days not just canceling people for something that they say or may have said, or if there's some sort of implication, but people are actually digging back now to tweets 5 years old, 10 years old, or even video content that was created in the 90s or whatever. So should we be canceling people based off of things that they said in the past?
As much as I hate to agree with one thing that was said in an earlier panel, something that is absolutely true is we are not allowed to grow and change as public figures. Every single thing you've ever said at any point in your life is constantly the thing that you always believe right now.
True, that is a good point, but I dare say Milo's going to say he's grown and changed since 2016 or whatever. But the growth and change he's gone into is he's grown into a Nazi. He's now just become a Nazi, so, you know, whatever.
No matter how contradictory it might be to things that you've said currently. You can go back in time to any figure. And the problem is, like, I say this all the time, I'm so glad that when I grew up, when I was a teenager, there wasn't as much social media that is like, you know, as permanent as it is now, right? Nobody has a link to those old MySpaces or LiveJournals or Zygote.
Yeah, I can't believe I cancelled him. I personally, individually, was the only person involved in the cancelling of Milo Yiannopoulos. I'm taking full credit. Actually, that's not true. There was another guy called Social Justice Gamer, who was the guy who I got the clips from initially. So I'm even my tiny little portion of it, I'm only taking half the credit for. I hope that person hasn't been online for fucking ages. I hope they're okay and not like dead or something. I don't know. Anyway.
You can find all sorts of horrible, stupid shit that people say at all points in their life. The idea that if you ever own up to any of it, or if you apologize for any of it, or you recognize any of it from 5 or 10 years ago, that people are going to try to destroy you, that's absolutely insane to me.
Yeah, it's, somebody came up with a good expression for it, offense archaeology. I actually don't
Hello,
mind
Christy.
or blame people, especially when they just say, no.
Don't forget, tomorrow night, not just Christy, this is a shout out to everyone listening and watching. Tomorrow night, 7 PM on my YouTube channel, we're doing Zardoz. I did a lot of fucking editing of tit pictures and minge and a little bit of cock. Those screenshots are in the OBS. Come and watch it, otherwise I've wasted my time. It's Sean Connery dressed very, very strangely in basically orange pants. Enjoy.
Wasn't me, must have got hacked. Like Joy Reid did, I think it was Joy Reid, wasn't it, on MSNBC?
Why would you ever acknowledge any of it? Yeah, there's
No, she had some old blog post where she wasn't particularly nice about gays or something, and I read it and I was like, she's not wrong. But she basically came out and said, someone hacked my blog and retroactively dated these posts and inserted them in there. Obviously a lie, but do I care? Not especially, because if she's a black woman coming from a particular community that has particular views. I mean, her views on homosexuality are very mild compared to what you would find in a lot of black Pentecostal churches. And I'm not.
Or as opposed to the white churches in America, which are very gay friendly. What are you talking about, dickhead?
Asking the offense police to start knocking down the door and arresting pastors. And I don't think that her pandering to homophobic sensibilities, whether or not she has those beliefs herself at the time, now, whatever, all the wrong questions were asked. The fact that she had an old blog post, it's inexcusable for people to go back and surface this stuff later. And for her to say, wasn't me, got hacked.
I'm being attacked by a moth. I've left the window open with the lights on and a moth has gotten in. So if I get eaten by a moth, it's going to be live streamed on Twitch. You can view it there.
Fair play, girl. I don't blame you. The only question that should have been asked is whether or not this was or wasn't you. What do you actually believe about it today? That's the only thing I really care about.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing. If somebody says something and you're not really sure how to take it today, and we kind of go back a little bit, you can establish like a pretty clear pattern of like, oh, well, you said this 2 years ago, you said this 3 years ago. Maybe it looks like you kind of do mean this thing. I think that can be valid. But this idea of going back, you know, like 10 years ago, you tweeted this, you know, kind of racist joke, so now you are currently like the most racist person. I think it's ridiculous. It's such a waste of time. There's so many more important things to talk about.
Well, we're going to have to get used to that on a grander political scale as well, because every young kid that grows up now, eventually one of them is going to become like prime minister, and one's going to become well, several of them will become prime ministers and presidents of countries, and they'll all have like TikToks of them saying like racist shit or something. So we're going to have to get used to that having been a thing. That's just a fact of life going forward. There are going to be no absolutely clean politicians in that regard, because in the past, when like Donald Trump has undoubtedly been phenomenally racist in fucking all of his life, and outside of the 2 times the federal government successfully sued him for racial letting practices in his buildings, most of those racist outbursts and stuff won't have been recorded, whereas now everything's fucking recorded. So young people getting into politics will undoubtedly have that shit raked very effectively, as they always do, and yeah, we're going to have to get used to the fact that everyone's going to have some shit on them now, so, and judge accordingly.
It's also insincere, because what it means is that you've watched the person closely in the present day and you've been unable to find anything good.
So you have to go back 10 years to find an example of it. Yeah.
I haven't always been the nicest guy to my employees. Some of them I've treated very well, some of them I have not treated so well. And one of the ones that I did not treat so well sold my entire email archive to BuzzFeed. And a story came out of this where I was apparently, quote unquote, close to white nationalists. What was that?
Well, you were, and you were caught sending anti-Semitic messages to people, to Jewish journalists.
Actually happening was I was just buttering them up for a story like any journalist does.
Well, no, you literally were defending Nick Fuentes, the fucking Nazi, earlier. Nick Fuentes, who's reading a prescription for people, getting into his movement, is a book by Oswald Mosley, the leader of the British Union of Fascists in the 1920s and 30s. Yeah, Milo, you hang around with and are very friendly with white nationalists. That's not untrue. Again, you wouldn't be. There's no way you'd get a successful libel case on that.
But with the emails they had, they could construct a fairly persuasive case, and BuzzFeed being BuzzFeed, who can blame them? They did the best with what they had. What they could not produce was a single, in this apparent example of me being, adjacent to or fully paid up member of white nationalism, a single example of me expressing an opinion in 9 years of emails that was even remotely racially insensitive.
Milo, you tried to get an immigrant kicked out of the country on a campus tour of colleges. Like, I don't know, they don't need to trawl through your emails to find racial insensitivity, my friend. When I say my friend, I mean horrible prick who is not my friend.
Not a single word that was remotely critical or insensitive or offensive towards black people, because they didn't exist. So they had to instead go back into history and construct something using this offense archaeology. So not just because I've experienced it too. I have not done it to anyone without. I have written pieces about people based on their past actions that I've uncovered. When I have approached them and said, do you still hold these views? And they have said yes or not answered, or I found evidence that they have continued to hold those views into the present day.
So if they've not answered, so you have done offence archaeology. So the thing you're criticising is the thing you've
other
done.
than that, I don't think I've ever done it because it's disgusting.
Stephen, you made a comment a moment ago about how in cancel culture we're not really allowed to evolve at this point. Do you feel like there's a double standard that falls along political party lines? Because I look around sometimes and I see maybe comments Joe Biden made, certain people who tend to fall on the left make, and whether they be racially insensitive comments, they may be homophobic comments, but it's, well, I've evolved. Democrats seem to be able to evolve. Republicans seem constantly stigmatized by the labels of racist, homophobic, bigoted, and they're never able.
Well, yeah, because if they did evolve, they wouldn't be members of the Republican Party anymore, because they are institutionally, to the very core of who they are, racist as fuck. So it's not a matter of they're not allowed to evolve, because if they did evolve, they wouldn't be Republicans anymore.
Able to evolve themselves, do you agree?
I think for stuff like this, you really have to go issue by issue. This idea that it's only a political thing, they talked about it in a prior panel here. When you bring up Republicans, the politicians, hold themselves to higher standards than the Democrats. I mean, Al Franken stepped down over some stupid pictures, and the entire Republican Party was backing Roy Moore. The idea that this is a standard that only applies to one party is a laughing stock. The only people that believe this get all of their news from 7 different Facebook
and also all of their money from one side of the partisan.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
I don't believe this either. I have to tell you, Brandon. I don't think it's true. I think it's a more complex picture than that. I do think that liberals are given more leeway.
Even Milo slapping the moderator down. Jesus. What an embarrassment.
Because the prestige culture is left-wing, and because, journalists point in a particular political direction. And if that's the sort of trivial point that your question is leading to, then yes, fine, I agree with you. I think more precise...
Journalists point in a political direction, apart from all of the major, well, not all, many of the major newspapers and TV stations are overtly right-wing. In America, Fox News is the #1 cable news station. In Britain, the top 2 selling newspapers are both right-wing as fuck, that being the Daily Mail and the Sun. Like, the idea that you can paint that picture as anything remotely universal is just a farce. I mean, again, he mentioned earlier about having conversations that don't comport with reality, and yet he's doing exactly that.
Precisely, we have a lack of understanding on both sides about conservative media figures who dare to tiptoe into comedian or chat show host or something more than just barking in a podcast. Those people are not well understood and not really allowed to have jokes. Their jokes are treated like serious policy statements, and their
well, the jokes they tell are racist. Yeah, I mean,
serious opinions are kind of written off as jokes.
Homophobic
Whereas on
or
the left,
transphobic or
we're
whatever.
happy to accommodate people like Jon Stewart and Bill Maher. I think it's a different hypocrisy.
Is Bill Maher even on the left anymore? Because didn't he call you a young gay Christopher Hitchens? Like,
I think there is one, but I don't think it's the one you said.
One question actually I would have for Milo on that, so I'll play the other side on that a little bit. Do you think it's fair that you can evaluate the same joke differently depending on who it comes from?
No, not really, because I think lived experience is complete nonsense.
yeah, context doesn't matter. Context doesn't matter at all. Lived experience is nonsense. So if, like, a black person's telling a joke about growing up in the hood, that's completely the same as me, a white person from Britain, growing up in the doing jokes about growing up in the hood. Because I would clearly understand that in exactly the same way as a person who would actually live that experience. Lived experience is relevant, isn't it? In the same way that someone who grew up on a cattle ranch in Texas would be able to do jokes about growing up in Birmingham exactly the same way I would, because their lived experiences are basically the same, even though the closest I get to cattle is eating the motherfuckers, right? We both have the same basic understanding of reality, therefore lived experience is irrelevant. Just as I would be able to do jokes about sucking black cock in exactly the same way Milo would, even though I've never sucked a black cock, and Milo seemingly does nothing but that, apparently, according to his own jokes. Yeah, he's just talking shit. And he knows he's talking shit. Lived experience is irrelevant. Fuck off, man. Like, yeah, context doesn't matter for some reason.
I think if a joke is funny, it's probably funny whoever says it. I think it can sometimes be funnier if the speaker is talking about a group they know well or laughing at themselves. So I think when Chris.
So lived experience does matter. The thing you just said was it doesn't matter, and you then said, well, sometimes it can be funnier if it's told by someone who understands that. Oh, you're so stupid. You're so stupid. You're debunking yourself one sentence after the other. This is remarkable. I mean, it really is. Do I even need to do this? Do I even need to subject myself to this nonsense when he's debunking himself in real time? Fucking hell.
Rock makes a joke about race relations that, is obviously from his experience as a black guy. I think it makes his comedy a little funnier.
So his lived experience matters. Oh, Jesus Christ, kill me. This is amazing. This is amazing. Yo, he's such a dumb bastard, man. Fucking hell.
Sometimes. But by and large, when you rip those jokes out of context, I think they're either funny or they're not. And I certainly don't think a joke goes from acceptable, funny, and safe for public consumption to unacceptable, cause for cancellation, and this person should get fired based on.
Well, I think it sort of does to an extent, because it would be much more difficult for the now very, very famous and indeed infamous, often cited by right wingers who want to get away with saying the N-word, the Chris Rock routine. Was it black people versus N-words? Although of course he uses the soft A. No, actually, is it soft A or hard R version of that phrase? Whatever. Anyway, he uses the actual phrase, in which he discusses what he sees as like a cultural split between one part of the black community in America and another part, and how he's very much in favour of one part and not in favour of the other. That is a totally valid look at black community at that time, because again we're going back to like the early 2000s, I think that set was from. So maybe it's changed, maybe it's gotten better or worse, who knows. Well, I'll tell you who knows. Black people, because they're from those communities, so they could, someone could do a revised version of it with new material. modern material. But that skit works because he understands that community in a way that I wouldn't, and Milo wouldn't, and Destiny wouldn't, and whoever this other person, the shit moderator, wouldn't, because we're not from those communities. So we don't understand it. So it wouldn't work. Now, we would be allowed to say it, because that's how freedom of speech works. We'd be allowed to say the words, but it wouldn't work. It wouldn't actually be funny. It would be strange and cringy. Because when I would talk about, oh, black people versus N-words, people would just be like, what? What does fucking British honky boy know about any of this? And that would be a fair critique. I don't know shit. Outside of what I learned from like Chris Rock, I suppose. But, you know, but I don't live in those places. I'm not from there. So me trying to talk about it would be ridiculous. So he's talking shit, and he knows he's talking shit. God almighty.
The speaker. No, I don't.
So this is something where I would completely disagree.
Wonderful.
And yeah, so I'm curious on this. I feel like if you were to take a rural person and show them I don't watch much of his material, but like I'm pretty sure Larry the Cable Guy makes a lot of jokes about, you know, hillbilly redneck stuff like that. If you were to take a joke that he says about those types of people, I feel like they could watch that.
Yeah, I know Chris Rock has renounced that skit. I'm just using it as an example of like it worked in its time because he was from that community and it worked, right? Like that's, and I realise he's now, because right wingers have used it and abused that thing to try and get away with basically saying the N word. That's what they want to do, and attacking, you know, at least part of the black community. Which, I mean, they want to attack all of them, but if they can get away with attacking part of it for now, they'll stick with that under the cover of doing social critique and comedy and stuff. It's just a joke, bro. Honest. Yeah, of course it is. So I was just using it. I know he's like abandoned that and doesn't stick by or whatever. But I was just using it as an example of like a famous thing that people will have seen. Probably most people will have seen. Of a skit that only works because he's from that community. His lived experience makes that like a funny, interesting look at a part of America in a way that if I did it, it wouldn't, because I don't have that lived experience. So lived experience is enormously important. It's the basic point I was trying to get across.
And enjoy it and laugh at it a little bit more than, say, Dave Chappelle making the exact same joke. Even if the joke is the same, it feels like we kind of color the joke based on who it comes from. That if you know a certain disposition a person has, you know their beliefs, it's kind of okay if they joke about something, but if there's somebody else and you...
And actually, yeah, I mean, let's flip it on its head. Let's say some of the critiques that a white comedian would make about white cultures, right? So say here in Britain, there are various comedians who will make jokes about like white working class culture because they come from that, and that's where I come from too. So if I do jokes about white working class culture in Britain, that makes sense because I'm from that and I can like socially critique it in a way that someone from outside it can't. Now that's not to say they can't do jokes about it, but they're doing it from their point of view. They're doing it as an outsider looking in. Whereas if Chris Rock does content about the British working class for some reason, that wouldn't really make a lot of sense because he's not from here. It doesn't. That would be incongruent, obviously. And the point is, Milo Yiannopoulos would be very offended if Hannibal Buress, another black American comedian, were to critique white culture in a way that he really wouldn't be if it was a white person that he politically agreed with. If Roseanne Barr was doing material about white America, he wouldn't get offended by that in a way that if Hannibal Buress was doing exactly the same material, he would. Because that would be anti-white racism, you know, reverse racism, all that shit. So it's nonsense, and he knows it.
You think that they might, you know, actually be a little bit antagonistic or aggressive towards their topic when they joke about it, it feels a little bit different. I feel like that's a fair stance that most people can take.
I think maybe it's just a difference of degree, because you know, I kind of already granted you that maybe it's a little bit funnier if the person's laughing at themselves, or a little bit funnier if they have some direct knowledge of it. But only really that's a question about packaging more than anything else. I think that for the most part, a well-turned joke is pretty funny, whoever says it. Now, I mean, there are great insult comics from the past. Not many of them, you know, alive anymore. But the great straight white males of the you know.
Well, the straight white males, yeah, okay, Milo. Don't make it too obvious who you're pandering to, mate. And by mate, I mean definitely not my mate. Yeah, if they're doing just insult comedy, that's fine, whatever. But when you're talking specifically about doing like political material, insights into a social setting, then it really does matter. Social, you know, lived experience matters. If you're just doing insult comedy, no, obviously not. Like fucking Andrew Dice Clay. It's sold out Madison Square Garden many times somehow. Very popular comedian in certain circles, very unpopular in certain circles, namely me and many others. But his material doesn't necessarily exist on his lived experiences necessarily, because he's mainly just being an offensive prick. He's not really doing social commentary as such. I mean, it's social commentary of a sort of, like, you know, racist working class New Yorker. that's his bit. But he's not even talking properly about those racial groupings. He's just insulting them. Whereas if you're going to do actual critique or insight comedy, like social commentary type comedy, your lived experience matters. Can't believe I just used Andrew Dice Clay as an example. Jesus, it's true though. I mean, it works as an example. It's just he's so unfunny. I find it difficult to call him a comedian, but technically that's what he is.
Hectoring, badgering, curmudgeon type, right? Who would tell jokes about other racial groups that today might make us wince slightly? But I still would not consider them cause for cancellation or for concern. I think the main
because they're
reason
being bigoted against the same groups you're bigoted against.
I don't see comedy
two Jews
as a
walk into
way
a bar.
to alienate. I think by far and away.
I don't think I've ever heard two Jews walk into a bar jokes. It's usually like a Pakistani and a Jamaican walk into a bar. They're both racially inferior. That sort of thing, right? But yeah, like you could also work with two Jews walk into a bar, I suppose. Another weird noise. Why weird noise is happening? Stop weird. Oh, it's if someone follows me. Oh, okay. But I don't. No, I don't mind being told. I just don't want the fucking noise. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, but hello, British Bob, whoever you are.
There's a reason why chat-up lines are jokes at whoever's expense. I think comedy
Whoa, no, they're not. Chat-up lines. I mean, they can be jokes, but sometimes it's literally like a comment on how someone looks. If I come over and say you've got a nice arse, love, which, by the way, superb chat-up, Kev. Great example to use. But if you say something like that, that's not. If that's a joke, then you're essentially saying you don't have a nice arse. I think your arse is unattractive, which is not a great start. So it's obviously not all chat-up lines are jokes. It's not really that relevant.
Comedy brings people together a lot more than it divides them.
Everything he says is just wrong. It's difficult not to
laughing
interrupt
at whoever, maybe laughing at a group that's not here, makes a connection. They're not affected by it. They don't have to watch you, but I'm making a connection with you, and we're laughing and we're bonding, and we might be bonding about the plight of white people and talking about how we have to be subjected to the sight of this
the plight of white people, the poor white people. That's the thing we need to bond about. I wonder why people might think he's okay with neo-Nazis and white nationalists when his go-to example of him bonding with another person is white nationalist shit about the plight of white people. Okay, babe. Fucking hell. Embarrassing. What a clown. Anyway, yeah, also, Milo, just because you're bonding with your fellow white nationalist scum in that way, if you're telling jokes with people, or you hear racist jokes happening and you don't fight back against it, that has ramifications outside of just that that hyper individual situation where it's just you and another person, because both of you walk away from that interaction thinking that racism is okay, and you act upon that in your daily lives, and that spreads. That's how that societies, the people around you impact you and you impact them.
Royal wedding treatment on Fox News of this gold coffin of this awful drug addict felon who held up a pregnant woman at gunpoint, a total scumbag that even Fox News was giving the royal wedding treatment to. I think it would be okay in that context. Excuse me. I think it would be okay in that context.
What's he on about? Who held up a pregnant woman? What example is he giving there? Does anyone know? Does anyone know what he means? I'll let it play on for a little bit because I
to make some jokes about black tantrums, for instance, in respect of rioting, whatever. So no, I can't agree. I think comedy brings
black tantrums include rioting, whereas white Americans riot over sports events, which is not that at all. That's fine. George Floyd, did he hold someone up at gunpoint, a pregnant woman at gunpoint? Did that actually happen, or is that like a right-wing talking point? Because that's the first I've heard of that. Look, I heard he had drugs possibly in his system, but I didn't know anything about any of that. God, he's insufferable, isn't he? Anyway.
Together a lot more
I'm gonna try and get through this.
I mean, I don't think they're necessarily mutually exclusive positions. I think, I enjoy all sorts of humor. I think racial humor, dark humor, sex humor. I think, yeah, I agree with that. But I think we have to acknowledge that somebody like a white guy coming up, I don't know what I'm allowed to say here, but a white guy coming up and doing like Chris Rock's old incredibly famous skit that I'm not going to quote, versus Chris Rock giving that skit, it's going to be taken a lot differently.
White people in blackface doing the N-word family and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's going to be taken a lot differently than like...
Hang on, whoa, Milo, why did you say N-word? Why are you being politically correct with us, brother? Surely, you love being offensive and out there. Why just say the N-word? Say it. Fuck's sake. These politically correct SJW cocks. Jesus. There are lots of the ton of phony stories about him. I thought George Floyd was the only guy guilty of misdemeanors. Where did that come from? Yeah, I mean, I'm tempted to say that the story of George Floyd holding someone up at gunpoint is right-wing shit, because they've tried to throw everything at the guy. I mean, he's fucking dead. He was murdered by the police. But these bootlicking scum want to defend the police, so they'll throw anything they can to try and justify it. As if, even if that happened, even if he had held up a pregnant woman at gunpoint, A, that's not what was happening at that time. He was being arrested for potentially using a false banknote, which is something that anyone could do. And even if he was guilty of either or both of those crimes, the police aren't just allowed to execute you in the street. But Milo's like, no, it's fine. Fuck it, the fact that the police murdered a guy, that's fine, because he might have been guilty. But if a man gets accused of rape, he deserves his day in court. Which, I mean, is true, but you see the implication there, the hypocrisy. If it's a black dude, fuck it, execute him in the street. If it's a rich white man, he deserves his day in court. That's the racial bias.
Which I think is fair, because I think it comes across
yeah,
a little
but who's
differently.
realistically actually going to do that? I mean, nobody. Who's going to watch it and enjoy it? Nobody. How many DVDs is this person going to sell? Nobody. I mean, who is that comic? I don't think they exist.
Sure.
So we have about 5 minutes before...
So there would be some people for whom a joke would work, and some people for whom it wouldn't work. Almost as if their lived experience matters, and that context informs the audience as to what the point of the jokes is, and therefore would largely decide whether the reaction they get is one of laughter or, oh, that's a bit weird.
Before we're going to throw to audience questions, I want to touch on the issue of social justice, hate speech and social justice.
Social justice,
Milo,
which is interesting because these people have trained their audience to hear things like social justice and woke and think evil. So, just bear that in mind, I suppose.
does anti-white racism exist?
That's the first question he asks. This is beyond a parody. This is beyond a parody now. Literally, his first question is, does anti-white racism exist? What do we think Milo's answer might be? Quick guesses in the chat. Anyone think he might say, yeah, of course it exists. It's the worst kind of racism. It's the only kind of racism that exists in the world. Honest.
Racism of all kinds exists. If you have lived in America, around this country, in various different states for any length of time, you will know that the most racist group in the country is Hispanics.
God almighty. He was never going to say whites there, was he? No, of course not.
They hate absolutely everybody, including themselves, and everybody knows it. Absolutely.
No, neither of these two fucking chomps on the stage is going to push back against that. They're just going to let that racism pass. Okay.
World, and it's not even close.
This is not a debate. This
The way
is
they
a
talk
debate.
about
This is
black
a
people
joke.
is monstrous. It is bone-shattering, the way that they talk about black people. The way they talk about themselves, almost as bad. The way they talk about white people, well, it's ungrateful and it's, you know what I'm indignant about, whatever.
Ungrateful. Ungrateful. Let's marinate in that for a second. Hispanic people are ungrateful to whites. Okay. Fucking hell, this is dreadful.
Who cares? But there is
you
racism
care.
in all directions of all
You
people.
said
There's
it.
been an attempt recently to do this kind of postmodern exercise on the word racism. Just
Postmodern.
deconstruct it and
Postmodern, he's seriously, he's this close. He's fucking this close to lobster hierarchy. And then I might actually void my fucking bowel.
as you all know, reimagine it as a system of oppression that is exercised upon the powerless by the powerful. It's all
Well, that's not a postmodern thing. That's always been a part of racism. Fuck off, Moth. He's landed on a different wall. Dickhead. Anyway, yeah, powerful structures, racist structures have existed since governments have existed, basically. This is not a postmodern thing. This is the same thing with Jordan Peterson. The idea that this is some newfangled thing is just nonsense.
all bollocks. No one believes it. It's crap.
No, it's not bollocks, and lots of people do believe it because it's true, Milo.
am perfectly happy to see wild allegations of racism, sexism, all the rest of it floating around society generally. Why? Because it tells us that the right and the left share some core values. We all think it's bad being mean to somebody because of their skin color.
That's not true. That's not true. How can you look at modern America, or indeed modern Britain, and think that that's a core value of the right? It's so patently not. Donald Trump is like the king of the right, and is racist as fuck. Old prickface Boris Johnson, ditto. What are you talking about, you fucking idiot?
And nothing else. We all think it's bad discriminating against somebody because of things they can't change about themselves.
Not true. Not remotely true. The push for removal of gay and trans people's rights, for instance, would be one example.
We all think it's bad treating women like crap.
Why did Trump allow the Violence Against Women Act to run out then? Or certain clauses of it, whatever. So clearly that's not the case, Milo. You're a liar.
The reason that conservatives get so upset about the allegations and that left-wingers make them so often is that we fundamentally agree on the values in question.
No, the right pretends to. That's the point. The right claims to, but doesn't.
We're both agreed that racism is bad. We're both in agreement that we shouldn't be engaging in a lot of these antisocial, bigoted, and self-destructive behaviors. So I'm not too worried about the allegations floating around, but what your question's getting at, which is this postmodern deconstruction and attempt to
Seriously,
sort of
so close
together
to
what
lobsters.
racism is and what it means. The Robin DiAngelo white fragility thing. It's crap. It won't stick. It's got about another 5 years in it, and it's obviously nonsense. As anybody who has ever lived next to a Hispanic family knows, racism goes in all directions. Stephen.
Are either of these two fucking chumps actually going to push back on that obvious racism, or just let it stand? It'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, so I would take the actual complete total opposite side of this. Unfortunately, I think when we talk about racism, I think you spend like 90% of the conversation defining, what does it mean to be racist? If you're going to talk on the individual level, can a Hispanic person be racist against a black person or a white person? As much as I'd love to fight Milo on that, half of my family is Cuban, and that is, everything he said is absolutely true. But now,
So people he knows that are Cuban are racist. Okay, so therefore all Cubans and all Hispanics are racist. Like, fuck you, man. This is racist guff. I'm not saying there aren't Hispanic people who are racist, I'm sure there fucking are. I'm sure there are black people who are racist, and there are fucking Inuit people who are racist, whatever. There's all types of racist. But the idea that Destiny can say because his family are racist, which would explain his racism quite comfortably, I suppose, because his family are racist and his family, at least in part, are Cuban. Therefore, he totally agrees with what Milo said about all Hispanics. Better discourse. I repeat to you that the title of this shithouse fucking conference is Better Discourse.
That being said, has the class of white people ever been demonstrably harmed by Hispanic people? Absolutely not. Has the class of white people ever been demonstrably harmed by the class of black people? Maybe a few more people on Twitter get banned for something or whatever, but like it's the Holocaust?
What?
Did you say white on white people?
No.
Someone had to say.
So
Someone share more about the Holocaust. Firstly, I hazard a guess that not everyone in the room believes in the Holocaust. Secondly, even though for those who obviously who do, because you know it happened, that was done by white people against mostly other white people, to be fair, but it was done by like almost exclusively, if not actually exclusively, white people, depending on exactly where you draw the line of whiteness, of course, because there were people from the Balkans who were took part in all of that. Whether you would define them as white, they were defined as Aryan enough, but whether ultimately they'd have been allowed into the German Reich, who knows. But anyway, yeah, it was white people doing it, so shut up. Also, good to see the better discourse is still involving shouting out from the audience, because that's so much better.
sorry.
Someone had to say.
How long did it take us to get to the Jews?
No, we did.
This actually
Went down on Twitch again.
That would be an example of white on white.
What? Oh, suck a dick, man. Why is it doing this? Why am I down on fucking Twitch? Why does it do this? God almighty, this is annoying. Let's get through it. Let's power through it.
But real quick, so like I think that it is important sometimes that well
what about the effect?
To be fair, I'm using the Twitch beta because obviously I'm not really beta. I'm more upsilon. But you know, if we're going to go with Greek letters, we'll go with beta. And it's not great, but we'll see.
Hispanics as a class, on blacks as a class, wage depression, the fact that in most societies when you have waves.
Yeah, but who's enforcing that wage depression? It's white capitalists, you stupid bastard.
Of immigration, the previous ethnic group or the previous religious group, whichever one came in en masse, tends to move up. You know, if you look at Indians from the subcontinent,
this requires,
in Britain,
but
this
isn't race analysis. This is class analysis now, right? We're talking about new workers coming into displacing.
Okay, but we're just saying, you know, that the existence of lots of new illegal immigrants from Hispanic countries has a negative effect on the black population.
Lots of things. Very boring statement. Lots of things can impact lots of things in lots of ways. I think that it's important when we talk about like racism as a social construct. That sometimes we need to understand, you know, as a class, you know, there are certain groups of people that might benefit from certain power structures that other groups of people don't. You know, one popular divide right now in the feminist movement is realizing that white women have been the recipient of more affirmative action than any other single minority group. It's caused quite a split in feminists in terms of people of color in the feminist movement.
It seems to only be a surprise to liberals.
Well, no, I think most people understand it. But the issue is that you have to be able to have.
Milo's just he's just a troll. Why do people give him the time of
conversation? Again, it's the same as the conversation we had earlier about cancel culture. If you want to acknowledge or fight against, you know, certain ideas of structural or systemic racism, that's fine. But you just have to understand the realities of what you're talking about. You know, these people that like to pretend that, well, a black person and a white person pulled over in any city in the United States is going to be treated exactly the same. Okay. You know, everybody knows that's not true. Don't pretend that it is.
Fine. Obviously, it's trivially true that we should be able to have these conversations. I just reject your framing entirely. You know, left-wingers tend, on the whole, I'm making very broad generalizations here, tend to think in terms of systems. You know, you're born into a system and, you know, you have limited power over that system. Whereas right-wingers tend to think in terms of traditions. And because left-wingers think in terms of systems, often in a more abstract sense, it's easier for them conceptually to break and remake them. Conservatives want to kind of tinker with their institutions because they know it's from the institutions, Catholicism, capitalism, property rights, you know, the rule of law, all the rest of it.
No, that's not Catholicism. It's mostly Protestant, isn't it? But it's, again, Milo just wants a Catholic theocracy. That's all he's interested
the
in.
strength and success of society flows of the family. And I just completely reject the systems analysis that you're doing about structural racism. That doesn't mean that there aren't socioeconomic inequalities that stem from certain things, but the idea that that can map onto allegations of racism and then suggest affirmative action programs or
So it might have something to do with the systems, but I fundamentally don't want them to change because I benefit from them. It's my little Milo decoder there.
Reparations. I actually don't mind the argument for reparations, but for very different reasons. The whole structural frame of critical race theory is complete horseshit. It is economic Marxism mapped onto social issues in a very shoddy fashion.
It's economic Marxism, but apparently it's also liberalism. So, checkmate, atheists. He's just throwing out. It really is economic Marxism. He's Jordan Peterson.
That doesn't work, and it will not work. It won't hold. It won't
Imagine
hold
that.
because it.
A fucking economic Marxist nonsense gets a what is the equivalent of a round of applause for this tiny crowded flop of an event?
It just doesn't bear the slightest bit of scrutiny. It doesn't work when you do it with gender. It doesn't work when you do it with race. It especially doesn't work when you do it with transgender circus people.
Sure. So I don't.
The systematic frameworks that the left use all the time. They say, well, we've got to be able to talk about these things. I will talk about these things, but I will not talk about them in the terms that you are asking me to, because the terms that are this is another. I'm not having a go at you, by the way. This is a very abstract thing about where the left argues from. Another thing they do, in addition to censorship, is setting the terms of.
Milo, you want to do censorship. You're just annoyed that you can't do as much as you like.
Of debate, by redefining words like racism. So, in order to have the discussion at all, you've already got to.
Motherfucker, you just used the term economic Marxism when it wasn't remotely applicable. So don't talk about redefining words.
Grant them the premise that racism is actually a function of a system, you know, that privileges some above others, and there's this oppressive cloud, and it has various effects. You're granting so much of the enemy's argument that from that position you can only lose. And this is just entirely the wrong frame to look at anything.
Did he say transgender circus people? I thought he said surface people. Like they are only showing it on the surface or something. Did he? I don't know. Either way, he's a transphobic piece of shit. Yeah, obviously. I mean, it goes without saying, really, but yeah, he's an awful human.
Especially history.
Sure. Well, I can understand some of that. You're begging the question. If you agree with my definition of racism, I already won half the argument, of course. There's a reason why we look at things in terms of like massive structure or systems. And that's because that's the level that government policy works at. One of the big frustrations that I have if I talk to conservatives is people want to reject any type of structural analysis in favor of, well, what can individuals do? Well, I don't know, but that doesn't really matter. We can't really affect an individual change on like a wider governmental level or even on a wider cultural level. Like we typically talk about these things in terms of people, even if we look at like religious commandments, right? We talk about how men ought to act or how women ought to act or how the institution of the church, you know, needs to do policy. If, you know, you were Catholic, I was Catholic as well. I appreciated your earlier conversation about transubstantiation. You know that there's a structure in the Catholic Church. You've got your archdiocese, you've got your rulings that come down from Pope, you've got catechism. Even the Catholic Church acknowledges at some level of structure that's given to your entire class of people, and then that is actually broken down based on are you male,
but
are you female?
But you're talking about institutional hierarchical organization.
Mm-hmm.
It's a completely different kind of thing from a social justice frame.
I think it's a
lens through which you look at
no.
this thing.
I think that it's very valuable to be able to look at groups of people and to make statements about how people act and then how they ought to act. I mean, we need to have
that's
that
a broad and claim out to the point where nobody could disagree.
That's literally what class critical race theory.
The point I was trying to make was that I'm sorry, I did interrupt you.
Go ahead.
The point that I was trying to make is that very often we have these debates, and indeed the one we've had tonight has been an example of this. We have the debates on their turf. Now, as it happens, he and I agree on some core civic values that I think most respectable, reasonable people will agree on. We will disagree horribly on all kinds of other things that are outside the scope of the debate tonight, I'm sure. But, just to give you an example, when does comedy go too far? Well, you can look at it from the point of view of fence-taking socialists and the rest of it, or you could reframe it. You could say, well, comedy actually means something completely different in the real world, in literature, for instance. What kind of comedy are we talking about? Are we talking about paradisical, purgatorial, or infernal? Infernal comedy, following, Dante, is very much what we see online, and that's, disembodied.
He's even doing fucking Dante memes. Like he is Jordan Peterson.
Demonic and dreadful. Purgatorial comedy, which is the kind of thing you're talking about, like stand-up jokes going too far, is something is rooted in the possibility of redemption. So, are we talking about whether these people can be saved from their whatever? I'm getting off the point, but I'm trying to explain to you that there are frames that we can talk from that have much. First of all, they're much more useful and much more interesting. They draw on a body of literature and history that lefties just don't know, and they also get us much closer.
Yeah, left-wing people don't know about the history or anything. History graduate. Just saying.
Truth much closer to enlightenment and much closer to one another. And almost every debate I've heard in the last 5 years has started over there, and we've been scrambling to grab the debate field back from them, since they've demanded that to even speak at all, we've got to use their language. So this is what I'm trying to encourage you to do in your debates with your friends, is just say, whoa, take a step back, all that shit, let's start again.
So, deny reality so that you can start to spin your narrative. Again, I'm decoding Milo for you.
Milo, we're going to have to leave it there because we're going to take some audience questions before we wrap up.
Yeah,
tonight.
let's see the bigoted crap they go up with the audience.
Surprising amount. I'm going to try and drive a bit of a wedge into that now. I have a bit of a blind spot for Stephen, but I'm interested in this. Milo mentioning very early on the talk about how bullying should be encouraged, and I'd like to talk about maybe the importance of making people, or what is the obligation of us to make people less fragile and more resilient to the effects of words, and also is there value?
I find it so fascinating that defenders of Donald Trump will say people need to toughen up, they're too sensitive, and yet he'll tweet out like Fox News is an evil piece of shit because they said, oh well, maybe he didn't handle the COVID thing very well. That's it. Or like Mike Pompeo, not Mike Pompeo, what's his name, fuck's sake, he was his Attorney General. Jeff Sessions is like a piece of shit. What a sad loser. Pathetic. Like, oh my god.
Value in the idea of banter or dark humor in bringing people together and actually bringing us closer. If we're recognizing our differences and we're making humor about that, is that building, can also be a force to build bridges of trust and bring us together?
I can be super quick and give them most of the time. First of all, it's bullying and building resilience through stress and through inclement circumstances isn't just a good thing, it's absolutely necessary.
No, it isn't. That's a lie. It's enormously damaging.
For people to build healthy, happy psyches. And second of all, is teasing and all the rest of it, is this a kind of acceptable way to go on? Is this a good thing? It is an absolutely critical and indispensable way that men communicate. And one of the reasons that ridicule and criticism has been so maligned online is.
And again, Milo's going to now, I think, go into the spiel about how, criticism and good-natured joshing. Now, there's a difference between, like, poking fun at friends and violently, viciously attacking, verbally, someone else. That's the difference. But Milo wants to do the latter under the guise of reform.
Is that our discourse has become very heavily feminized. So
It's become feminized. Literally, he's about to do fruit face theory. He's about to do lobster hierarchies. He's about to do fucking what's the other thing he does? The dragons of chaos. That's become feminized. What I'd love to ask some of these right wingers. What the fuck do you mean by that? That's such bollocks. Oh my god.
Racism have become recast as abuse and harassment because when you say mean things to women, they cry. And
unlike you, Milo, who does, when your Jangle said something that you didn't like, you got very upset about that, and that's fine. Let's not pretend people don't get emotional. You're an idiot.
We don't want to be like that because we're nice gentlemen who are chivalric and we don't want to see women crying.
Yeah, you're chivalric. You're literally arguing in favour of bullying, mate. Fuck off.
Public. But the fact is that taunting, teasing, being mean to one another is how men bond. You will never change that. All you will do is drive it underground and make it surface in eruptions if you try to suffocate it. This kind of thing you're talking about, bullying, taunting, being mean, trolling, it is what...
Note the conflation of things there. There's the kind of good-natured joshing, trolling, bullying, all that sort of stuff. No, trolling and bullying are very different things to having a bit of fun with your friends. Which I'm sure he knows, he's just lying.
Men are, especially working class men, by the way, which is why so
Yeah, he knows all about the working class. Definitely.
much of this debate is rooted in class, because a lot of this is a class war against middle class journalists on working class people.
Yeah, whereas Milo Yiannopoulos is very much in favour of the working class, being the elitist snob that he is. Yeah.
But being mean to one another is something.
And wanting to keep the social and economic order which keeps working people down as well, because, you know, he's a bootlicker for the upper classes.
Women do behind one another's backs, and men do to each other's faces. You will never change that, you will never fix that, but the way that men are with one another, this is what's being driven out of public life and being maligned, and
How
it
is it?
It is absolutely devastating for the modern male.
Yeah, the idea.
What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. It's on the same level as this. Oh, Western civilization's under fucking threat from you know, whatever, the cultural Marxists. It's just meaningless buzz phrases. Feminized culture. It's damaging the modern male. Fucking nonsense, man. It's just the same regurgitated fucking rightist talking point.
That you have to be a bully to be a man is such an emasculating way of
No, I didn't
looking
say
at
that.
masculine. Well, yeah, but this idea that like bullying is inseparable from the identity of being masculine, I think is incredibly silly. I think it's important to recognize that there are different types of bullying. If we're going to say that like, should you be able to tease your friend over something or make fun of something, I think that's fine. Bullying a kid every single day at school to the point to where he's crying and then goes home and hates his life, probably not okay. I think one of these we can make. Sure, yeah, I think it's important to clarify what we mean when we say bullying.
No, but you didn't say that, Milo. That's the point. You imply it. Because you want to get away with bullying people you don't like. Because you're an evil little bastard. And you want your rightist friends to be able to get away with bullying gay people, women, Jews, black people, whatever.
In terms of like, there are a lot of old ideas that we have about what makes a good person and what makes a resilient person. The problem is all we see are the success stories. And there's a lot of stuff that we know that we used to think is really good that just doesn't work. For instance, like spanking your children. It just doesn't work. And we've looked at this, you know, study after study after study, result after result after result. Every now and then you'll get a very successful person that survived it, but what you don't see is the thousands of people whose attachments to other people in life are ruined, who are depressed, who can't form healthy relationships. You don't see all those people. You only see the one successful guy that survived it, and now you must think, oh, well, you know, I guess these...
Yeah, they do this again with like successful black people as well. Like, there can't be structural racism. Look at this one black guy who's rich. Like, as if one success story discounts the millions of failed attempts at that.
People are very resilient, ignoring all of the failures behind that person.
I was spanked as a child growing up, and I will spank my children when I have children one day.
Yeah, so he's a child abuser. That's, you know, not surprising for Milo.
Just put that out there.
Yeah, I mean,
Imagine, yeah, physically abusing children, round of applause. This is the kind of scum they attract to better discourse. Fucking hell, if this is better discourse, what was it before? Just literally smearing shit on each other.
It's not the first thing you try to use with a kid. I mean, I've kind of inherited kids now. I've got a stepson and a stepnephew who live with us, you know, 16 and 17.
As if you'd allow children anywhere near this pedophile defender. Jesus Christ. Because if a person rapes one of those children, that's he can't really complain about that, can he? Because that's just a healthy part of sexualization for young people, apparently, according to Milo Yiannopoulos. Jesus Christ.
It's certainly not the first thing that Dad reaches for, but here's another thing that a lot of the women won't like. I heard a lot of muttering and sighing because they don't like it when you tell them the truth. Well, fortunately, I don't want to fuck any of you, so I can tell you whatever. So, another thing you might not like to know is men need to be afraid of their dads, and so do girls.
What a fucking sociopath or psychopath, one of the two. You need to be afraid of your... No, you need to have respect for them. That's true. That is true. You need to be afraid of them. What kind of pathetic existence? What kind of spineless individual thinks you need to be afraid of your father? That's disgusting to me. What an appalling fucking joke of a human being. No wonder he's so fucking broken. Would anyone be surprised if he was abused by his parents when he was younger, and he's just trying to justify it to himself so he doesn't feel so bad about it? What a pathetic individual he is. Jesus.
Especially women, actually, because women who aren't afraid of their dads go out and get husbands they're not afraid of either, and they're both fucking miserable. There's...
So women need to be afraid of their husbands as well. So women need to be afraid of their fathers, so they then go and find a husband they're also afraid of. So women should be constantly afraid of their male figures in their lives for their entire life. That's Milo Yiannopoulos' view of the world. What a pathetically stunted individual. What an evil man. What a truly evil worldview that is. The fuck is wrong with this dude? I mean, that is the evil is the only word I can think to that even comes close to sufficiently describing what a fucking prick he is.
There's an extent to which being aware of your dad's power as a man helps you to come to understand your own and help.
Yeah, that. Right, again, conflation of two things here from Milo. Being afraid of someone and being aware of their power, and therefore wanting to emulate that power and that hopefully positive familial and societal role, right? Those are two different things, right? Being afraid of someone is someone being physically abusive or sexually abusive, emotionally abusive, whatever. Or there's that, perceived threat. Whereas someone being powerful is very different. This is what we mean by toxic masculinity, by the way, is that he is literally suggesting that male figures in people's lives, fathers, husbands, need to be abusive in order to be a real man. They need to be physically, emotionally, sexually abusive to their children, to their partners, in order to be a proper man. And that's not what masculinity is about, okay? Or certainly not what it should be about. It's about being a positive human being who sets good examples for their children to try and live up to. That's how they learn about their father's power and try to emulate it and be societally positive, impactful people. Okay? Milo Yiannopoulos, his worldview is cancer, and if we accept that cancer, we will die of that cancer. Okay? The debate bros are disgusting for having tried to rehabilitate this motherfucker's career. I hope it goes no further than this. He's a toxin. He's a disgusting human being. He really fucking is. What a disgrace.
Helps you to learn to channel and manage and control it, rather than sublimating it with drugs and turning into a school shooter, which is what we have now.
I think real quick, I think it's really important to recognize that respect doesn't have to come through fear. And I think that everybody...
Where does it come from,
Where does it come from? Where would respect ever come from if not through violence? What the fuck is wrong with this guy? Jesus, what a broken person, really.
One of my favorite go-to examples.
But hang on,
is every
whoa.
single person.
Even assuming there is a divine authority, that person's power is completely different to that of a husband. What the fuck is wrong with you? Or a father, or anyone. You're literally comparing just a man to a god. Which, I mean, ironically, we did create God in our image, so I mean, that would make sense to a degree, but we're not actual gods. I mean, I am godly in bed, but that's a totally different matter. I'll take you to heaven and back. For about 3 minutes at most, but, what else? Yeah, his view of the world is so stunted. Where would respect come from but through fear? It's Catholicism 101, isn't it? It's Catholic theocracy in manifest, Jesus.
In here, assuming you've graduated through the school system, has known one of two types of teachers.
And I say that having come from a Catholic background, by the way. My lived experience is that that's exactly how Catholics would operate, given the opportunity to. And of course, my knowledge of history, where they did do that when they could.
There's one teacher that will give you a demerit or a detention or a mark on whatever card, no matter what stupid little thing you do. They exercise their authority over you at every given opportunity. And then you have that one teacher that you have so much respect for. They might have passion for what they teach. They might treat their students with respect. And you can get a million detentions from that, from the earlier teacher that's so quick to send you to the principal's office. But if you disappoint the latter a single time, you feel so horrible.
I think it's a terrible
And
analogy because since when were 14-year-olds afraid of getting detention? For a lot of young people, it's a badge of honor.
There aren't a lot of
no one's afraid of that.
But
That
that's
doesn't
the whole
produce
point.
fear. And those teachers who are nice, who you say are respected, they're not respected. They were pandering and trying to be the kids' friend. And the kids got away with murder, so they remember.
This is better discourse. I just want to really ram that point home. This is called better discourse. These two guys just ranting over each other about school teachers. This is a really worthwhile, high-level ideas situation going down here. This is the free marketplace of ideas, stock exchange. That's how fucking free market this is.
Remember them fondly.
How many 16, 17-year-olds have been hit by their dad
This
so
is the
many
World
times you don't
Trade
care anymore? They
Organization.
eventually go off.
That's
and
a different
it's the
issue.
exact same.
Okay,
no, it's the
guys.
exact same.
We've got a long line of people who'd like to ask some questions. Let's keep the answers brief.
That's a good wedge.
We will
That's a good
do
wedge.
actually
Parenting
brief.
Next week.
Next
Go
week,
ahead, sir.
parenting.
Discourse.
To start with, Milo, I'd like to compliment your fashion feng shui. Those shoes go well with your outfit.
You know, I was worried. I was worried because I was getting dressed.
Worry not.
I was
sexy,
no, I was
dude.
getting dressed indoors, and you know, it's very difficult without LEDs or natural light to know exactly how it's all going to come together. But thank you.
You made the comment in the hotel. I saw you. I wasn't sure if it was you. You know how I knew it was you?
The
I looked
fucking
down and you were wearing
shoes.
some sparkly fucking boots. And I was like,
Oh,
that's
it was-
gotta be Milo.
I was
in Milwaukee. There's no way
I
there's
was in
anybody
gold
Milo.
boots. It's true. I was in gold boots. I was in gold. Well, thank you.
I'd like to read you the words of a wiser man. It's as if our moral safeguards are broken down by the new landscape in which the default is attack, such that we forget that there's a person or a human being on the other side. So perhaps what's needed now is a bolder form of censure. After all, the internet is not a universal right. If people cannot be trusted to treat others with respect, dignity, and consideration, perhaps they deserve to have their online freedoms curtailed.
I wrote this quote down for.
No. This is what this wiser person. He is, of course, recalling my own youthful
Yeah,
self.
from the Crown, of course.
This is one of my favorite kinds of questions.
So that was a Fart Huffy Milo quote, okay.
As I said this evening, I have matured since 2015. My 2015 position was very different from that. I think it's reasonable because the
Yeah,
online
you're a
landscape is
fascist now.
completely
Whereas in
different than 10 years ago when I wrote that.
You were
Or-
just pandering to Gamergate fascists. Whereas now you've become the fascist. You stared too long into the abyss, and the abyss slapped you in the face.
8 years ago when I wrote that, it does not bear any relation whatsoever. In the very early days of Twitter, I took a slightly different view of trolls than I later came to hold, which was actually that they were the last precious keepers of polemic and ultimately civil disobedience, and of course, you know, Gamergate and everything like that. I embraced them fully, and I still do.
Yeah, you embraced them fully because you realised it was financially viable for you to do so. You despised gamers before that. You're a panderer. You're a fake. You're a
Like
phony.
trolls and all the rest of it. My problems with free speech come from people typically come now, I think, from people abusing positions of power. I still love a good troll. So, I
No, well, it's not a thing about positions of power. It's all individual stuff, Milo. You said it earlier. There's no systemic problem here, no. Just individuals.
I don't think when the internet changes as much and as dramatically as it does over the years, that it's unreasonable that a commentator's views would mature with it. But I appreciate the
views haven't matured.
the audacity and I appreciate the effort.
So Milo has evolved. Stephen, do you have any comments? Or was that just for Milo?
I read that quote. A lot of my opposition research was relating to your early publications, but I actually find that your current point of view actually seems to coincide somewhat with that. I don't know if you would be completely in disagreement about a lot of what, even that quote in and of itself, that there's a lot of people
I think
online.
I shot to an extreme, and I'm settling on a more reasonable position.
Yeah, possibly.
I think it's fair.
One
to
thing
say.
that also, I think trolling has changed a lot too. When we talk about a troll like 10 or 15 years ago, the idea of being a troll is that you knew you were saying some dumb shit, but that's what made it funny. Nowadays, it's hard to tell who knows if they're
Right,
being
and
dumb or
then
not.
now there are layers of irony.
Yeah.
There are movements that you know, Gamergate was this example where actually things could be accomplished, or at least culture could be changed by large, some more organized groups of people who you would call trolls, but they were acting in a particular direction with a particular motivation in mind. So I thank you. That's generous of you to
Yeah,
help
fascist
me out with
garbage,
that.
bullying
So
people, yeah.
yes, the definition of troll has changed somewhat too.
Earlier it was stated that people should be deplatformed
Oh fuck this, I'm done.
My question.
I can't be bothered. Sorry, I was going to go through all the way through to the end, but I'm actually just... I'm finding myself bored. Just bored with this. Is everyone okay if I just stop? I feel like we've got the basic gist. This feels like it was winding down with shit questions from idiots anyway. Can we stop there? Is everyone okay? Don't blame you. Please stop. See, now that I know you're okay with me stopping, I don't want to stop. Now I want to go on and like... Nah, I'm only joking. So I'm going to switch back to where are we? KevPix on that one, and the hang on, to go into that. Boom, there we go. So you get the cultural Marxisms on the Twitter, on the Twitch, and the Kev pictures on the thing. Can we have some cat pictures? I don't know. I'm actually not sure if I've got many cat pictures on this, to be honest. On this machine, because it's new and like on my I need to keep meaning to like transfer the pictures over. I think there's a thing you can do with the thing anyway. I don't know, like the network or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's a mercy killing, Frank. Yeah, that's how I feel. I want to put everyone out of their misery because this is miserable. Anyway, yes, so Milo Yiannopoulos is garbage. His worldview is so pathetically shrunken and cancerous. He needs to be sent back to the fucking ditch he was dead in. I don't know why the bait bros were like, I'll tell you what would be good, getting that cancerous tumour back into action. Let's do that. It's fucking embarrassing, man. Fuck him. Anyway, Destiny it had some good-ish points at times, but also just sat there and let Milo be racist as fuck without any pushback, and the moderator was essentially sucking Milo's dick, which is not really moderation, my dude. That's not how that works. So yeah, as if Destiny wasn't already on like away at the away stadium, so to speak. The people fucking the moderator was like, so Destiny, you said this thing, you're a fucking piece of shit. Anyway, Milo, tell me more. Just rant for 10 minutes about transubstantiation or some dumb shit. Like, oh god. Anyway, so fuck Milo. Destiny, meh. The moderator, garbage. MythCon, total flop. Very, very funny. Kev, do you remember Kristen Betha Williams, aka American Anarchist? I do, yes. I just got live with her and a few others a few years ago. Oh, were you? Oh, hello, Robo Dragon. That's the thing, I've been on streams with everyone, so I forget almost everyone I've ever talked to. I find that a lot. People contact me on Twitter like, do you remember a live stream you did at 4 in the morning 3 years ago? No, I don't. Sorry. But yeah, hello, cyberspace. Anyway, yes, yeah, so Destiny was okay though. I mean, he's, as always with Destiny, problematic but not absolutely dreadful. But anyway, that was fucking tedious, wasn't it? That stream was, that conversation was really pointless. Jesus Christ. Just I might take a look over some of the more highlight bits from some of the other streams if people send them to me. I definitely want to take a look at Karlin Borisenko's bit with her Karening at the fucking hotel in Wisconsin and all of that. See how many times she brings up that, how badly she's moulding about all of that. But other than that, thank you for listening and watching to this nonsense. Thank you for watching and listening to this nonsense. If you're on YouTube, go and subscribe to my well, you don't have to subscribe, it's called following there, that's the free bit. You can also subscribe on Twitch, but that you have to pay for that, and you get a little Rory emoji. Anyway, but go and follow there and subscribe if you really like it, whatever. And if you're on Twitch, go and subscribe to my YouTube channel, it's free. You can give me money on Patreon though. Give me all of your money. That's the basic underlying point. Give me all of your money now forever. But most importantly, yeah, if you can go and check out both of those accounts, it helps the algorithm and all that shit. Rate, comment, and subscribe. Click on the bell button so you get notifications and all that shit. And I'll be back tomorrow with Zardoz, the 1974 Sean Connery flick, where he's a futuristic weirdo. I don't know. Anyway, so that'll be 7 p.m. UK time, 2 p.m. on the east coast of Americana land tomorrow. With Christy doing a watching trash film thing. But until then, and that won't be, I don't think I'll be putting that on Twitch, so I don't know when I'll be back on Twitch, but certainly on YouTube. You can go and, like I say, go and subscribe to me on YouTube, and you can watch it there on your YouTubes. But until then, thank you all for listening and watching. It's been a delight. Pip pip.